Estella Leston is the daughter of the Duke of Leston and former empress of the Empire Lastiel. This is an unhappy girl with the shortest marriage lasting one night, and Estella was popular in a bad way after her night with Karen Prince. Now someone is turning to Estelle, says that the emperor has died, and therefore proposes a divorce. The man claims that this marriage was needed only by the late father, and he did not have the desire to marry her. After all, she doesn't love him anyway. At this time, His Highnesses are informed that the funeral preparations have been completed, after which the man just turns around. But then he asks what the girl will say. A short time later, the young lady's father is already screaming furiously that the man threw the empress out immediately after the wedding. But his modesty was just a game for the public. After all, after the divorce there will be a purge, and he will get rid of unruly aristocrats like them. But divorce is quite difficult for the imperial family, and if the girl does not agree to it. The main character only calmly replies that she doesn't want to, and the father then asks what he's talking about. But the girl then claims that she will divorce him, but the father is not very happy with such words. Then he asks if she still doesn't understand what's going on. After all, if the emperor died, then now Kaizen will take the throne, and the girl, like his wife, will become the empress. And now the father screams that if she is going to miss this opportunity, then let her get out. After all, the family Leston, I need a daughter like that. The main character then looks a little sadly at her father and then closes her eyes and sighs. And then she says that she understands and will divorce him. Kaizen will then leave the house. A short time later, the girl is already packing all her most valuable things into a suitcase. When she finishes, she looks out the window and then with a bitter look, almost crying. She understands that she spent 10 whole years to match him. One fine day, the boy gave her a blue moon. This is a treasure passed down by the empress from generation to generation. And the guy gave her this decoration for her 10th birthday. After this, the girl began to live only for his sake. The little girl had no time to rest. She studied politics, history, military tactics, art or literature, as well as strict court etiquette. These 10 years were dedicated only to him. However, the girl did not even know about such an end. Well, now she understands that this is the man who was the meaning of her life. The girl takes off her jewelry with blue stones and understands that for the sake of him, her husband for one day, she told the lie he wanted. The girl said that he was right and she never loved him. Now she understands that she will never regret this decision and no matter what happens. But a little later, the woman was shocked to hear that she seemed to be pregnant. And 6 years later, the girl was already living a quiet life in the village. Now one of the women in the village turns to her and says that they will close early so she can go home. After this, a lady with blonde hair approaches the woman, and she says that most likely work in a bakery is much more difficult than the girl imagined. Her arrival, their sales soared. Suddenly, a young man with red hair runs up to the woman and addresses her. And his mother then says that she asked him not to run there. But the boy then enthusiastically tells her to listen because the imperial knights have arrived in the village, and they are even in full armor. The main character then seemed to say goodbye to life. She immediately takes off and runs to her home, and the woman in shock asks what happened. But the main character just runs as fast as she can and wonders if they really found her so quickly. The girl thought that she had hidden well from them, after which she immediately opens the door to one of the rooms and calls Theo. The boy just gets out of bed and asks if it's his mother. The main character understands that she knew that she could not hide him there forever, but she did not think that they would be found so quickly. Now someone outside the door is asking if anyone is home, and the main character immediately approaches the boy and asks if he remembers what she was talking about. The boy then asks if his mother is talking about transformation, but she claims that everything is correct and let him go to her. At this time, the knights climb higher and higher up the stairs, and the main character gives her son some drops and asks just to be in time, after which the knight enters the room and asks if this woman is Lady Estella. A lady with blonde hair hugs her son, and a knight claims that His Majesty the Emperor is looking for her. A short time later, they are already on their way, and the main character notices that her son is afraid and then picks him up. A short time later, they find themselves in the palace, and the knights report that they have brought these people to the Emperor. The man just stands near the fireplace and then turns around, and he tells Estella that 6 years have passed. The woman then realizes that Kaizen is the only Emperor Lastiel. The woman remembers how he gave her flowers and realizes that this is the man she loved with all her heart. She now bites her lip before bowing and greeting His Highness the Emperor, the Lord of the Empire. The young lady thought that she had no feelings for him, but she realizes that everything is wrong. The emperor at this time approaches her and asks why she continued to hide, and she only thought that he would plunge her into eternal sleep when he caught her. Well, suddenly the emperor looks at the baby and the main character understands this, after which he immediately turns around and hugs him. The man just thinks what kind of boy this is and asks Estella about it. The woman understands that all this time she has been preparing for something like this, because 6 years ago, the man began to eradicate the rotten nobles when he took the throne. Although the Lord of the North was able to raise a rebellion, the price was the complete destruction of his city, and the failed rebellion did not divide the empire into 2 factions. An imperial faction formed from young nobles, and the faction of aristocrats. Estella's father, Duke of Leston, became the head of the aristocratic faction, and after 6 years of war, almost all the aristocrats died. But the situation was still difficult, and Estella's father was alive. From the very moment of news of pregnancy, Estella was afraid of one thing, and that was Togo. That her son will become a tool in the war if they find out about him. Lonely and frightened, she would not have been able to stand it if the child was also taken away. Therefore, the girl understood that she needed to hide it for as long as possible, and, if possible, then for the rest of her life. Now the main character confidently claims that this child is her nephew, and the emperor then asks if her brother wasn't lonely. But the girl then claims that this is not her brother's child, but a cousin's. Sigmund, who was the heir to the Kahlenberg family, died 6 months ago in the war. He planned to make his illegitimate child, born from a maid, his heir. And Estella's maternal grandfather, Marquis Kahlenberg, sent the result of a relationship test to accept this child. The emperor then asks if this child is the successor of her maternal family, and they say that she is not much like them, and the only one who is similar to her is this. Suddenly, the emperor looks at her with a furious look. However, the girl decides that if she doesn't calm down now, then everything will be over, so she tells His Majesty to finish. The girl remembers that her son's eyes are now blue and understands that the imperial blood is unique. Therefore, the young lady thinks that he will not guess about the real color. After the young lady found out about her pregnancy, she found her grandfather on the eastern outskirts of the empire. He was poor without any servants, and this was the best place to hide. It was the grandfather who helped hide Theo's identity, however. This was not enough, and there was a catch that would reveal it. These are the red eyes of the imperial family. After all, any child of imperial blood has red eyes. The main character understands that she was lucky enough to meet a young pharmacist in the eastern forests. After all, she not only determined pregnancy, but also gave a previously unknown collection of herbs. And thanks to her, the main character got a potion that changes the color of her eyes. Now the main character takes her son by the little finger, and he understands what he needs to do now, after which he addresses the young lady as Aunt Estella, and the emperor wonders whether the boy calls her aunt. The main character at this time turns to the boy and says that everything is in order, and she understands that if she touches his little finger, then this is the beginning of the game. She and Theo have practiced in the past so she can be his aunt when needed. Now the girl understands that she did everything she could, but she wonders whether it will work. The emperor only asks why she is responsible for this child, and the girl, looking at him, claims that the only people left with his girlfriend are her and the child, and he was left without servants, so at that age he will not be able to take care of the child. The man claims that the young lady's grandfather is a strong-willed man, and he said that even under torture he would not tell where his granddaughter was. The main character then asks in shock what he did to her grandfather, and the emperor tells her to calm down because he is fine, and is now at the Dench residence. There was a misunderstanding when the girl and her grandfather became separated, but he has no plans to harm the war hero. The main character realizes that the Dench residence is on the way to the capital, and the emperor then turns to the young lady and asks if they can talk in private. The young lady realizes that the guy has begun to suspect and tries to separate them. And when the knights try to take the boy away, the main character approaches him, after which he takes her by the little finger and asks his dear Theo if he will wait in the next room for a little while. The boy then again understands that he should address his mother as aunt, after which he smiles and agrees with Aunt Estella. When the boy leaves the room, he turns around and looks at his mother again, which remains alone with the emperor. After this, the main character and her ex-husband sit down at the table. The main character is still worried and shaking a little. Well, the emperor then pours tea into a mug and offers her a drink, because even though it's almost May, it's still cold in the east. The main character understands that this is the tea that she loved when she still lived in the palace. And the girl then wonders if he really remembers those times, but then realizes that this is unlikely. The man now claims that the reason he was looking for her is because his grandmother is Empress Dowager. The main character then says that she heard that she died, and says that it's probably hard for the emperor now. The young lady also realizes that Kaysen's mother fell into eternal sleep, and he was raised by his grandmother. And the man now claims that she was the heiress of Duke Milan in the Southern Territories, and in order to return the land to the imperial family, her grandfather forced her to marry him. This is a stupid method, but in any case, now her property should go to the imperial family. However, she left a will with very strange contents, and the main character asks what strange means. The man then claims that it said that nothing related to the southern lands could be decided without the approval of Empress Estella von Lesten. This is what it said in her grandmother's will, and the main character is now asking what he is talking about. After that, she looks at the emperor and wonders if what she is thinking about is possible. But after this, the girl with a cold gaze asks what he wants from her. The man claims that a mansion will be built for her, and he will immediately be able to transfer the southern territories to the imperial family. But the main character then claims that she doesn't want the emperor to be a little angry because of this. He asks if she even knows how important these lands are. And the girl understands that of course she knows, because right now the nobles are looking for an opportunity, and the emperor does not want problems with the integrity of the southern territories. The girl claims that she did not say that she did not agree, so she asks to change the terms of the will. The emperor tells the girl to explain, and the main character then claims that first of all, it's better to let her grandfather get her pension back, and secondly, as soon as the will is approved, then let them return the east to her and her family. The man then puts his hand on his forehead and asks why. After all, she will have a place in the capital and not only money. He also claims that his grandmother took care of the girl, and no one was too upset when she left. That's why the woman wrote such conditions into her will. Well, now the emperor asks if the girl is going to ignore her show of sincerity. The girl says no, and then the man wants to tell her something. Well, the young lady then tells His Majesty that she is the only princess of the empire who, after her wedding night, was stripped of the title of empress. In addition, she was expelled from her family, and therefore if she returns to the capital, it is obvious that people will discuss her. Well, she is too tired of this. The young lady claims that they just want a quiet life, and she herself understands that this is not a lie at all. The entire capital is dangerous, and so even more people learn about Theo's existence. And if the pension is returned, then the three of them will be able to live together peacefully. And she would like the man to return the lands that went to the Kahlenbergs, but this will cause unnecessary unrest. And the girl understands that this is enough, because the first reason why she was deprived of payments was her connection with the rebels in the north. The man then gets up from his seat and says that he knew she was still there. Well, then he doesn't finish his sentence and says that he will accept her terms. And then he extends his hand and says that now it's his turn. Then he says that until everything is over, that young lady should under no circumstances be avoided. The main character looks at his hand, but then she simply says that she understands and will not run away. The emperor, despite the fact that the girl did not shake his hand, he becomes a little wary and clenches his fists. And a little later, the main character is already going to karate. In her hand, she holds a case that changes the color of her eyes. And looking at him, the girl realizes that she sold all her property to find him. And although she tried many times, she could not increase the duration of the action. And it only lasts for half a day, but the green lady thinks that this will be enough to get to the capital. And the girl understands that she needs to gain a little time before the next use. She understands that long conversations with pharmacists helped her understand medicinal herbs, and no one should know about the prescription. At this time, the girl is informed that they have moved to Marin Castle, and she can leave. When the young lady gets out of the carriage, one of the knights says that he will carry her luggage, and the girl thanks him. But when she looks at the uniform, she wonders if this is the new head of security. And suddenly the young lady asks if this guy is Sir Lyndon. The man then asks if the girl remembers him. And the main character then, with a smile on her face, asks how she could forget, because the guy protected His Majesty for so long. The head of the guard claims that in those days, he was a nameless knight of the lowest rank. And this is a great honor for him. But suddenly the emperor comes between these two, and he says that's enough chatter, so let them come in. The knight then agrees with His Majesty, and when the emperor leaves, he just looks at the main character coldly, which makes her a little surprised. After that, they all enter the palace gates together, and at the same moment, One woman runs away to His Majesty with tears in her eyes and claims that he has finally arrived. But when she looks at the main character, the girl realizes that she is hostile. The woman who hugs His Majesty only asks who this man is. Well, the main character only smiles after such words. And then he turns to Lady Miranda and asks how the Marquis Crouch is doing. The blonde then asks, a little surprised, if she knows her father. And the main character says that, of course, they somehow crossed paths so they know each other. The girl realizes that it was on the day of her debut, a short greeting between her and the Marquis. The main character heard that he is now the most important support of the imperial faction, and at this time someone runs up to them and asks to forgive His Excellency for being late. He also turns to Lady Estella and says that he is honored to meet her too. The man claims to be His Majesty's secretary, Earl Cloud Belian. The girl with blonde hair then says that she is pleased to meet you, and the lady who hugs His Highness asks if this girl's name is Estella. And is this really the girl who was thrown out? The main character, hearing this, is a little surprised, but then her son only approaches the Count, after which he bows and says that he is glad to meet you. The main character then apologizes and says that the boy seems to be repeating after his grandfather, but the secretary claims that the boy has excellent manners. The Emperor then only breaks out of the blonde's embrace and turns to Belian. He only tells Lady Estella to follow him, and also says that he will show the way if she doesn't mind, and the girl says that she will be grateful. After which she turns to Theo and says that they will go. When the boy leaves with his mother, he turns to the lady with blonde hair and says that they will see each other again. And the girl then only looks away and sighs, because she saw that the boy's eyes were not red. Theo, when they leave, only whispers to his mother that this girl looks like a princess. And Marianne at this time only addresses His Excellency. Well, he looks at her with a cold gaze, after which the girl still lowers her hand and bites her lip. When the main character goes with the secretary, he apologizes for this incident and says that nothing has been explained to the girl yet. Well, the young lady claims that everything is fine, so they shouldn't worry because she shouldn't have upset the person that His Highness likes. But the secretary only then asks in surprise what she is talking about, and the main character thinks that everything is really wrong. A man with dark red hair says that this is a misunderstanding, and they do not have such a relationship. And the main character then asks if it's from a tax, and the secretary says yes, and that's for sure. But Estella then thinks why and doesn't case and love someone younger. At this time, the secretary turns to Lady Estella and tells her to go there. When the girl enters the room, 3 maids greet her and say that they will be her maids until the girl reaches the capital. The secretary claims that the young lady might need personal maids, so he has everything prepared, and the girl will stay there for 2 days, so let her rest. The boy, looking at the luxurious room, is surprised, and the main character at this time says that they appreciate their kindness, but this is a little too much. The secretary claims that it's okay, and that the lady shouldn't worry about it. But the girl still looks a little puzzled, and then the secretary says, what if this aggravates her? Then he asks if he can ask for a counterfavor. A short time later, they find themselves in the garden, and the boy looks at the beautiful flowers. The secretary claims that he will say it directly, because when the girl arrives in the capital, the contents of the meeting must remain secret. The young lady then asks if she can find out the reason, and the secretary says that of course the main thing is that this way problems can be avoided. After all, 3 months have passed since Dovager fell into eternal sleep, and if it turns out that the problem with the inheritance is still not resolved, then he thinks that the lords of the southern lands will be unhappy. The main character understands that it was easy to guess that it was the nobles. And the man at this time says that they recently suppressed the uprising in the north, and he would not like to encounter this again. The main character then wonders if this is really a new uprising in the calm and loyal south of the empire. The secretary argues that sometimes a minor thing suddenly becomes a trigger. And the girl understands that this man is looking down on her, and then she asks if this happens. And does he really talk about her as if they were insignificant things? The guy then becomes wary and realizes that this girl is not like that at all. Well, after that he just smiles and asks what she's talking about. The main character then says that when the Empress's will is announced, they will still pay attention to her, and there is no way not to cast a shadow on the Emperor. The secretary then only looks at her warily, and the main character says that in this case, she knows her father will benefit from this. The guy then rejoices at such a simple answer. The young lady realizes that she looks like a smart, pathetic girl. She also understands that you can't appear all-knowing, but you can't let yourself be taken advantage of. The guy then only says how difficult it is to deceive smart people, and although this is embarrassing, he still asks for a favor and would not want to make a fuss out of nowhere. The girl says that of course she is not going to interfere in the affairs of the capital and will return to the east when the opportunity arises, to which the guy thanks her. Lady needs anything, let her tell him. The girl then says that she will remember this. And when the secretary is already going about his business, he realizes that the girl lost her place on the first day, and he thought that she was a naive simpleton. But he understands that the daughter of the Duke of Leston should not be underestimated, and in the future he will be more careful. The main character at this time is still sitting at the table and sighs because finally this guy has left. But then she looks at her son and sees that he is playing. However, suddenly the girl notices that he's about to touch some grass. After which she immediately runs up to Theo and screams that he should not touch this grass. The girl claims that this is Laganin, and he will get a rash if he touches her, after which the boy says that he will be more careful. The girl, looking at the grass, understands that this place has been abandoned because the emperor does not come there. And the boy then looks at his mother and then asks if that man is the emperor. The main character thinks about what he's talking about, and the boy then claims that he is talking about that capricious guy. The girl then, with a smile on her face, says that it is true, and he is the emperor, and then asks if she told him. The boy says yes, and his mother said that he occupies the highest level in the country, to which the woman says that this is true. Well, then she tells the boy not to call her mom just yet, and the boy asks if he can't still do that, after which he sadly bows his head. Estella tells him that they are playing until they return home, and then asks if the boy can handle it, to which he answers yes. The girl understands that Theo is doing better than she expected, and he is still at the age when small mistakes can be forgiven. Luckily, most people won't realize that he is Kaizen's child. And although the man did everything that was in my window, they were together only for one night. He took a contraceptive pill and said that he did not want to burden the girl. And now the young lady realizes that it looked like they were caring for her. But suddenly, flushed, the young lady realizes that it's enough to remember the past, because now nothing can be changed, because it's already clear that this pill didn't work. Now the young lady turns to her son and says that he seems tired, and then states that she will tell them to prepare the bath and he can go soon. However, when the main character is already grasping the door handle, she hears the maid gossiping, and one of them asks if this is really the empress, and the other replies that yes, and she is the daughter of the duke. Another maid then asks why the woman has returned and if she is trying to seduce the emperor. But most likely, this is the reason. The main character is surprised by this behavior of the maids, after which she enters the room, causing them to immediately jump up from their seats and ask if it is a lady. The main character only states that the child needs to take a bath and then asks if they have prepared everything. The girls look at her with frightened looks, and the main character asks if they have prepared anything yet. The women then say no, and they have prepared them, but then they wonder if the girl will punish them. The young lady tells Theo that she will bring a change of clothes, so she asks if he will wait a little. The boy then, with a smile on his face, says that he understands, after which the main character closes the door. But then she turns to the maids and asks if they thought she would ignore it. The girl tells the maids to go to the butler and repeat to him what they just said, after which let them bring new maids. The girls then scream with fear in their eyes, trying to justify themselves, but the main character only raises her hand and says that they should not dare raise their voice. The girl also claims that she will not punish them now because she does not want to scare the child. And she doesn't care what they say behind her back, but she won't allow them to say that in his presence. After which the young lady once again repeats that they should immediately go out and convey her words to the butler, and the girl also claims that she will check everything so that they do not dare to lie. The maids immediately leave the room. The main character sighs after that and thinks that she needs to go because Theo is waiting. However, suddenly the girl hears someone knocking and wonders if the new maid has already arrived, and maybe she should greet her. After which the main character tells whoever is behind the door to enter, and it turns out to be the butler. He apologizes to Miss Estella. At the same moment, other maids bring various gifts and decorations into the room, and the butler claims that these are gifts sent by His Majesty. The main character just turns to the butler and thinks what will happen this time. However, the girl then thanks for the kindness, but says that she doesn't think that she needs them, so they ask to return them. The butler then asks, a little surprised, what the lady is talking about, and the main character repeats once again that she said that she cannot accept this kind of thing, after which the butler is a little surprised and says to Lady Estella that His Majesty has invited her to dinner this evening and the gifts are just for that. The young lady understands that it is unpleasant for them to even see each other and wonders why he is doing this. Then the girl thinks about what is best for her to do and turns to the butler. A short time later, the secretary already informs the emperor that, as expected, the Duke of Leston began to act, after which he hands the brunette a scroll and he claims that the man was very careful, but it seems that something is bothering him. The secretary says yes, and it seems he wants to leave the capital, after which the emperor says that he needs to buy a little time because he will drive himself into a trap. The brunette also understands that Duke Leston is special, and it's most difficult with him because the man is a very cautious person, and so far there has been no chance to get close to him. However, suddenly the man begins to think about Lady Estella, but suddenly his thoughts are interrupted by a knock on the door, and the secretary says that he thinks this is news about gifts. The emperor then puts his hand on his forehead and says to let the butler in, after which he asks how it all went, and the man, a little puzzled, says that Lady Estella asked him to convey that it's a great honor for her, but she has to look after her nephew so I can't be away. She also apologized for her rudeness, but said that since she could not attend the dinner, he should take the gifts. All these words seem to be taken by the emperor, and the butler then realizes that he will most likely go to heaven before his mother. The secretary then realizes in shock that His Highness really sent clothes and jewelry to the woman, but he hasn't allowed them to even get close for the last 6 years, and now he's giving them gifts. The man then asks with a gloomy look if she refused only because of such a minor reason, and the secretary and the butler understand that things are bad. The servant says that the girl asked me to tell him that the child is still too small, so she is looking after him while eating, and she also cannot leave him to the maids, because she does not trust the first people she meets, and there was not enough time to instruct the maids. After this, silence hangs between them, and a little later the secretary addresses His Highness. But the emperor only asks if she wants to keep the child, after which he says that then let them come together, which leaves the secretary and the butler in complete shock. The main character at this time helps the baby wipe his head and he suddenly sneezes, after which the girl thinks that she has a bad feeling. A little time later, the main character is already at the table with her son. He is holding his favorite bear in his hands, and the main character turns to him and says that Theo should remove Lavin while they are at the table. The boy then says that he understands, after which he immediately puts his teddy bear aside. The main character, looking at the emperor, understands that she could not refuse him twice and wonders what he is thinking about. At this time, Marianne says that the venison looks great. She says it brings back memories of the hunting competition last year, and the secretary then asks if it was not then that Lady Marianne won the Queen of Autumn competition, because this is really a big event. The boy then turns to his aunt and asks who the Queen of Autumn is. And the main character then replies that hunting competitions are held in the capital every autumn, and one lady is chosen as the Queen of Autumn. Marianne then turns to the young lady and asks if her nephew knows about the hunting competition. The main character says no, and this is not accepted in the East. Well, the young lady with blonde hair then says what a poor guy he is. After all, he had never seen such a great event in his life. But the secretary then becomes a little wary and says that Lady Estella has much more experience when it comes to hunting competitions, after which he asks what the lady is thinking and can only tell them something. The girl then remembers the hunting competition and then speaks that when His Highness was 17 years old, the competition was magnificent. The secretary then says that he also remembers them and didn't the crown prince win then? The girl is then only silent for a little, and then claims that then she waited the whole day for the festival to end, and it was boring and also exhausting. But it was so long ago that she doesn't remember the details. His Highness the Emperor heard this and only clenched his fists and got angry. 9 years ago, the main character, as always, had conversations with representatives of high society, but she was very worried and wondered when this boring content would end. She remembered how the crown prince claimed that he would catch the best prey, so let her wait. The girl then hoped that Kaysen would return soon. His Highness was in the forest at that time and wounded another prey with his bow. The servant claimed that His Highness was very accurate, but the man understood that this was not enough, after which he ordered the servants to look around again. Well, a little time later, when His Highness heard some rustling in the bushes, he told the others to stop, and behind the bushes he saw a deer with yellowish fur. The man understood that he would approach, and then took out one of the arrows, and he pulls the string of his bow. But suddenly, another small one came out behind that deer, and the man didn't miss on purpose. He understood that he did not want this, but then shouted to the servants that he would go after her. after which he approached the deer and told him to calm down because he would not suffer. The man took out his knife and, looking a little sadly at the deer, immediately swung it. However, at the same moment, an arrow flew in and the man turned around, wanting to see who it was. It turned out to be the Duke of Leston, after which he turned to His Majesty and said that he would forgive him for his rudeness. A short time later, they were already standing next to a deer lying on the ground, but then the prince was punished by the servant who found him. However, seeing traces of red liquid on the crown prince's clothes, he asked in shock what happened, and the Duke only smiled smugly. The crown prince claimed that there was nothing like that, and he and the Duke were hunting for the same prey. So they decided to talk. The Duke then told His Majesty that yes, and the guy understood that he should not quarrel, and you need to be calm and also try to calm down. At this time, one of the servants argued that the whistle of the wind had become louder and it was time to return, after which the crown prince agreed and said that then they would go. A short time later, the emperor claimed that the crown prince who brought the best booty was the winner of that year. After which the man took the wreath and headed towards Estella. He asked the young lady with a smile on his face and if she would be his autumn queen, to which the main character, with a smile on her face, said that it was a great honor for her, after which the guy put a beautiful wreath of flowers on her head. However, suddenly the guy's hand trembled a little, and when the girl asked His Highness if something had happened, he just said that he was tired so he would go. The young lady then looked at Kaysen in surprise, and now she claims that these are just boring and depressing memories, and she doesn't remember anything else. The secretary is now puzzled, wondering what happened to the atmosphere and realizing that he needs to change the subject. He claims that there are a lot of bears in the area and they stopped hunting because it became too dangerous. But if a girl goes to a hunting lodge in the forest, the secretary then thinks why he even started talking about this. And the young lady's son asks if there are bears there. The secretary then realizes that the situation has been saved and says yes and quite a lot. And the boy says what he would like to see, after which the main character turns to Theo and says something to him. But at this time, one of the servants approaches the emperor and whispers something in his ear, after which His Highness rises and says that he has a lot to do, so he will go. When the emperor leaves, the lady with blonde hair also gets up from the table and says that she is also leaving, after which she looks at the young lady with a humiliating look and says that if next time she comes again with a child, she should first teach him manners. But it's difficult to cope with children without parents. The main character understands that it looks like she was talking about her, because the girl grew up without a mother. Well, after this, the young lady, only with a smile on her face, tells Lady Marianne that her parents are very generous and affectionate to her, so she is jealous. After this, the secretary immediately begins to cough 9. The main character meant by this the rudeness of a spoiled child. The lady with yellow hair immediately blushes and screams what the girl just said. And the main character asks if she really has such a short memory, because His Majesty lost his mother as a baby, and she was lucky that he had already left. After which the young lady extends her hand to Theo and invites him to go, to which the boy agrees, and the two of them leave, leaving the lady with yellow hair alone with her thoughts. The woman remembers how her father said that she must win the heart of His Highness this month, and she shouldn't let him be distracted by all sorts of girls from the outback. The yellow-haired lady bites her nail and thinks that she needs a plan because she can't be given the upper hand. And the main character at this time is putting her son to bed, and he says that he forgot Levin in the dining room. And the girl then realizes that she also forgot about this toy, after which she tells the boy that she will bring it and let him wait a little longer. Theo says let her come back as soon as possible, after which she falls asleep and why the main character cannot help but smile. A little time later, she is already heading down the corridor with a candle, but suddenly she hears as soon as she speaks and thinks who it could be so late. However, when she takes a closer look, she sees that it is Kaysen. The man, having finished his conversation with his servant, heads further along the corridor. One of the servants claimed that Count Siet asked to convey that the spider was caught in a false web, after which the emperor told him to continue observing, and now he thinks that he did not expect anything special from him, but the count turned out to be a good spy. However, when the servant is already heading back, His Highness realizes that there is someone else there and thinks that no one should go there at such a time. But then he sees the light of a candle bouncing off the wall and realizes that someone is behind it, after which he immediately grabs this intruder's hand. but then realizes that it is Estella and asks why she is there. The girl then bows and apologizes for scaring His Highness. The young lady also claims that the child left the toy and she would like to pick it up. The girl also assures that she didn't hear or see anything, but His Highness hears this. He just clenches his fists and asks if she pulled away like that on purpose. Then he asks why she talks to him like a servant, to which the girl is a little surprised. But then she realizes that there is no need to show feelings and says that he is mistaken because she is just showing courtesy to the Emperor, and if he is uncomfortable. But His Highness interrupts her and tells her to stop because a girl shouldn't apologize. The main character, looking at him, thinks that he invited her to dinner, gave her gifts, and she does something she hasn't done before. And looking at the Emperor, he wonders if he feels guilty. But the girl then sighs, after which he turns to the Emperor and says that if he plans to take care of her all the way, then it's better not to. After all, she has no regrets towards him. After which a young lady walks past him and says that the child is waiting, so she needs to go. The Emperor, looking at her, remembers how he gave the girl a wreath of flowers. However, his finger trembled when he saw the red liquid on the wreath, which was most likely that deer. The man immediately remembered how the Duke finished him off, after which he walked past the young lady and said that he was tired so he would go. Now he understands that this hurt the girl, and now he turns around and then goes his own way. The next morning, looking at the box in the nightstand, the young lady realizes that a thread is sticking out of it, and someone has opened the box. Well, the girl understands that there are only medicinal and dried herbs, so it's okay. However, the young lady also thinks about the possibility that they could not steal but plant. A little time later, the main character already turns to the secretary and asks if he is leaving today. The man claims that the weather is not very favorable, so because of the storm they decided to postpone their departure for the sake of safety. Main character, looking at her son, understands that she was only supposed to stay there for a day, after which she realizes that they have problems and need to meet her grandfather as soon as possible. After which, the young lady says that it seems there is no choice, and everything is fine. And then she asks if she can write a letter to her grandfather in Den's castle, because he may be worried. The secretary then says that of course, and let her give the letter to him, and it will be sent in the best possible way. The main character then gets up from her seat and thanks him, and then tells the secretary to wait a minute. A short time later, she hands him the sheet. The secretary just grunts. Then, a little puzzled, he says that it sounds very disrespectful, but then asks if he can read this sheet. After all, it is a rule to check outgoing letters during such trips. The main character understands that this is a lie and sounds plausible, but she still doesn't believe it. Therefore, the girl wonders whether he will behave like that time. However, he only reaches out his hand and asks Lady Estella if they are all right. The main character, with a smile on her face, says that of course he can read it, after which the secretary thanks him for his understanding and takes the sheet in his hands. When the secretary counts this sheet, he understands that there is nothing special there and only a story about successes and work. But suddenly he sees one line about chronic headaches, and the young lady wrote that his condition could only get worse in an unfamiliar place, but everything is fine with them, so let him rest and take care of his health. Therefore, now the secretary asks if the Marquis is sick, and the young lady replies that sometimes he doesn't feel well and it's because of his age. The secretary then says that it is clear, after which he puts the letter back and says that his check is completed, so he will send it right away, to which the main character thanks him. But when it is sent, the young lady thinks that this is an ordinary letter in which there is nothing suspicious, and that is how it should look. However, her grandfather will understand the real content of the letter, and now the main character folds her shaking hands and then understands that in order for their family to return safely, mistakes cannot be made. So now there is one problem left to solve. A little while later, when the knight is walking, someone pats him on the back, and when the guy turns around, he then asks what the lady wanted. The main character then asks Sir Leyden if he can help her a little. And a little time later, the main character already puts her hand on the box and asks if it is possible that someone opened this box today. The maids then look at the young lady in shock and say that no, because they are not allowed to do this. But the main character then claims that she also thought so. But someone opened it twice, and the maid then asks in shock how this is possible. One has entered this room except the three of them. Therefore, the main character asks if anyone has a guess. One of the maids then tells the lady that it is true that they were the only ones who came in, but they are not to blame just because they went there. The lady with blue hair then claims that it is a shame to say, But if they tried to steal something, they would not open the box twice, so they ask you to believe them. The main character then says that she would believe it if the goal was theft. The three maids are then shocked by such words, and the young lady claims that the criminal knows that there is nothing to steal there, and yet she carefully opened the box with the box in the morning, so she wonders what the criminal would have done if the box had not been inside. So she applied Laganin juice to her spot, and it is a rare forest plant that causes skin rashes. The lock is complex and can only be opened with bare hands, and now the main character tells them all to show their hands, after which all the maids show well. One of them hesitates. Their main character tells her to show in a good way, after which the woman holds out her hands, on which there is a rash, and immediately afterwards falls to her knees asking the lady to excuse her. The main character then turns to the maid and tells her to tell her who told her to do this, and the woman then doesn't even know whether she should tell her. The main character then says that she knew that this would take a long time with the right, and if she was unlucky, it would be an attempt at poisoning and not theft. The maid is very frightened by this, but still does not talk about it, after which the main character turns to Sir Leyden, and the maid then screams that she will tell everything. After which, with tears in his eyes, he says who it was. But a little time later, when the culprit is already brought to the emperor, then the lady with blonde hair screams that this is a lie. However, someone then claims that evidence has been discovered that the maid received money from Marianne. The knight claims that the maid admitted this, and the girl then asks, "How can you believe the words of the maids?" After which she points to the main character and screams that she bribed the maids and installed her. Well, the main character then calmly asks why she should do this, and the lady with yellow hair then doesn't even know what to tell her. After which her gaze stops at His Highness, and the girl begins to walk towards him, after which she screams, "Why does the young lady need this suspicious box at all?" And after all this was for the safety of His Highness. Lily with yellow hair claims that the girl had medicinal herbs and vials, so she had to check. Well, His Highness only asks if she searched the girl's things. After all, this is quite strange, and he also asks since when has she been responsible for his safety. The young lady then, a little puzzled, says that she was worried, and the knights then ask if she is a suspect, and the other replies that a pharmacist is a rarity in the empire. The main character then raises her hand and turns to His Highness, asking if he will give her the floor. The man then only nods his head, after which the main character turns to Lady Marianne and says that she should have brothers or sisters. The girl is a little surprised by this and thinks why such a question. The main character continues and says that the nanny in her mansion always carries with them medicines for different occasions for Lady Marianne and her brothers or sisters. Medicine for colds, to improve digestion, and for all kinds of wounds, as well as a sedative in case of shock. The yellow-haired lady is then surprised and says that it is only because her siblings are sick, and the main character then calmly asks if that's the only reason, and then claims that children are constantly getting sick or injured. And even Theo, at 5 years old, was already on the verge of death due to a cold, so she gives him 3 nutritional supplements. However, the secretary then raises his hand and says that he would like to ask a question, and then says that the girl had a large amount of unprocessed herbs, and that is a bit much for someone who is not even a pharmacist. He then asks if the young lady will explain this, and the lady with yellow hair then tells the girl that she even used a strange herb to catch the culprit. And how does such a simple lady know about this? And at this time the main character thinks that she will have to tell the truth. After which, the young lady claims that she is simply a beggar, and after leaving the family she lived with her grandfather without a penny in her pocket. Just at this moment the payment stopped and they no longer had money for servants, and even getting food became a problem. When the child got sick, she had to make the medicine herself. After these words, silence falls in the hall, and the emperor also tenses. And the main character at this time points to the lady with yellow hair and says that even so, the herbs discovered were intended only for first aid, and there was nothing else suspicious in her things. After which the main thing hero Nia asks if the secretary is satisfied with her answer. But the man says yes and thanks her, and the lady with yellow hair then screams in shock whether he will just believe her words. But the young ladies only turn to Lydia Mariana and say that if she described her for safety reasons, then everything is in order. However, she can no longer listen, to which the lady with yellow hair is very surprised, and the main character says that if she only wanted to check the box, then why did she do it a second time? The secretary, hearing this, is a little surprised, and the main character then asks Lady Mariana whether she really wanted to check the box or whether she was going to throw something in there. The girl is then shocked by such an accusation, and the knights keep their weapons ready. And the lady with yellow hair, unable to bear it, simply screams that this is not true. She also screams, turning to His Highness, that this is all a misunderstanding, and the main character understands that now this girl is not blaming her, but is trying to save herself, and this is the end. Estella understands that she does not need the enmity of the Crouch family, which has just gained power, but has no choice. The Emperor then rises from his seat and says that there is no point in listening any further, after which he approaches Mariana and says that she will be sent to the West Wing dungeon until they decide the price for insulting the Emperor's guests. Everyone is then a little puzzled, thinking how a girl can be sent to the West Wing prison because it is old and abandoned and is no longer used. When ice and yellow hair are taken away, she desperately cries out, asking His Highness to listen to her, and the main character then only sighs heavily. The Emperor then approaches the young lady and says that he is very sorry that she had to go through such a thing, after which he asks for an apology. The main character is then a little surprised, but then only with a smile on her face says that everything is fine. After all, these are trifles compared to what she went through when she was the wife of the Crown Prince, after which the girl bows and asks for forgiveness. She understands that since the age of 10 she has gone through many problems, and this case is much simpler, but she would not want this to happen again, and the young lady thinks how tired she is. Well, then she realizes that it's time to give Theo some medicine, and she needs to hurry before the color of her eyes changes. However, suddenly the main character hears someone running up to her. It turns out to be His Highness's secretary, and he grabs the lady by the shoulder. The girl is surprised by this, and the guy says that she needs to be careful, but after the main character asks what he means, then the secretary claims that Lady Estella of her own free will made the Crouch her enemy, and the first daughter is nothing of herself, but not the second. After all, Lady Florin is truly dangerous, and she has the greatest chance of becoming empress. The main character is surprised by this, and the man continues his story and claims that Lady Florin has recently come of age. Crouch's descendants advanced efforts to make her empress. The main character understands that she is only 20 years old, and then asks the secretary if they allowed the sisters to compete for the title of empress. But the secretary is only surprised by this and then asks if their world has not always been like this. The main character then, with a bitter expression on her face, says that the guy has not changed, after which she thanks for the concern, but says that she has nothing in common with that person, and when the problem with the will is resolved, they will not see each other again, after which the young lady bows and says that she will go. Leaving the secretary alone with her thoughts, she wonders if she really doesn't need this title, after which he remembers the Duke and changes his face. The next day, he is already sitting calmly with a mug of tea, and the main character sitting opposite him thinks why he is there again. The young lady claims that time flies and she would not like to detain such a busy person, but the guy claims that everything is in order and Lady Marianne will no longer bother her and His Highness has gone hunting. And thanks to her he now has free time, and the main character wonders if he really has that much time. But he understands that he seems to have become even more careful, and this is a little awkward. But suddenly the main character understands what the secretary said and asks if His Highness is hunting. And the guy says that, yes, the rain is not so heavy today, although it should get stronger again in the evening. At this time, a boy comes into the room and turns to his aunt, and then claims that his teddy bear is torn. The main character, seeing this, says that everything is fine and she will kill him, after which she turns to the maid and asks if she will bring needles and threads. A short time later, the main character is already sewing up the bear and says that this toy is old, so only she can fix it. But she herself thinks that what she did was not even because it was old, but because it was simply made from old curtains, which is why it tears so easily. But if she knew that he would like this toy so much, she would have made it from better material. Now the secretary, looking at the boy, thinks that he has an idea. Then he tells the boy that he doesn't need to worry because this won't stop the mighty bear. The boy then asks if it's true. The secretary says that of course he talked about it before, that they have a lot of bears in the area and it would be great if he looked around there. The boy, hearing this, immediately looks at his mother as if expecting what she will say, but the main character says that no, because the forests are very dangerous at such a time, after which the boy immediately droops. Well, then the secretary turns to him and asks him to forgive him because he seems to have been in a hurry, and the boy then says that it's nothing. after which he still smiles at the secretary, who looks at him a little surprised. And the main character, seeing how the secretary looks at her son, understands that this look is very similar to the one with which he looks at the emperor. After which the main character turns to her son and asks if he wants to take a walk around the castle. The boy then asks the truth and if he can, and the girl says that yes, if he is in the maid, after which the boy immediately runs up to the maid and hugs her. The main character understands that she did not allow him to leave the room so that he would not meet with the emperor, but now it is possible. And this is better than letting him get close to this sly man, so the young lady now tells the maid to walk around the castle and return when it's time for a bath, to which the maid says that she understands. And the girl, looking at the luxurious ceiling of the winter garden, understands that she needs to extend the effect of the color change until dinner, so everything is in order and there will be no problems. Now the boy is exploring the palace with the maid, and he looks with delight at all the luxurious rooms. But suddenly the main maid tells the gentleman that this road leads outside and asks if they should go in the other direction. But the boy agrees. But when he turns around, he still decides to go in that direction, to which the maid is a little surprised. And the boy at this time comes closer to the two men and greets His Majesty. The emperor then turns around and realizes that this is the believing child who always goes with Estella. The maid then apologizes to His Majesty, and he asks why the boy is here, and the maid replies that Miss Estella asked her to walk with him. The boy then asks His Highness if he is going somewhere. The emperor says that he is going to the forest to hunt. Hey, the boy, hearing this, thinks that there must be a lot of bears there. After which he immediately asks His Highness with admiration whether it is true that you can meet bears in the forest. The man is surprised by this question and then asks if he wants to see the bear, to which the boy with a shining gaze replies that yes, but then he still understands that he is not allowed and says that his aunt did not allow it. Emperor video series, she understands that usually children his age do what they want. They listen to adults, and these actions are in a boy older than himself. And so the emperor suddenly wonders whether the boy can worry about the fact that Estella is his biological mother. The emperor also remembers how he was left alone in the garden and wept bitterly. But then a girl with blonde hair, who was also almost crying, approached him and turned to His Highness. However, when she came closer, the boy only screamed that she should not come closer. And now, while the maid apologizes to His Highness and claims that Lady Estella asked to bring the guy back before dinner, the man understands that there is still a little time, but then he still decides not to do this, after which he puts his hand on the boy's head and says that they should try another time. The boy then, with a smile on his face, agrees with His Highness and wishes him a good hunt, after which the emperor leaves and the boy too. But suddenly, His Majesty begins to remember the expression on the face of the boy who so dreamed of seeing a bear, after which he puts his hand on his head and is silent for a while. And then he turns around and tells them to wait, after which he turns to the boy and says that this should remain between them. The young man, hearing this, is very surprised and delighted, and a little later the secretary tells the young lady that the young master is delayed. The girl says that yes, and he really was a little longer than he should have been. The girl understands that they should have returned already, and she might not have time to give the medicine. After which she immediately gets up from her seat and apologizes, but claims that she is a little worried, so she will go look for the boy. However, the secretary then says there is a problem, and he will go with her, and the main character thinks whether she can let him, because if he finds the child first, then he will see how his eye color changes. But the young lady understands that there is still time, so she says that she will be grateful to him. A little time later, the two of them are already calling the boy, but suddenly the butler turns to Lady Estella and asks what happened. But the girl only asks if he has seen Theo, but the butler then looks away and wonders whether he should answer. The young lady then claims that she hasn't seen the boy for several hours and asks the maid to return before sunset, and now she can't even find her, so she asks the man to tell him, but he only begins to worry even more. But after that, the secretary asks the butler what's wrong, and the man, when he sees the guy, claims that His Highness asked to keep this a secret, but it looks like he'll have to tell. After which the butler claims that the emperor took Theo with him hunting. Estella hears this and turns pale. And the secretary then asks how it happened that His Highness and the young master went together, and the butler then claims that the young master said that he wanted to see the bear, and at first His Highness refused. But then he said that they would not be there for long. The man also looks at the sky and states that it looks like it will rain soon and they should be back soon. Well, The main character then asks the Count how long it will take to get there, and the secretary claims that he can ride on horseback in at least an hour. The girl then bites her lip and thinks whether she will make it in time if she goes now. She considers this with shaking hands. But then she turns to the secretary and asks what she should do because the boy recently had the flu, and he shouldn't miss taking his medications. The guy remembers how the girl said that even at 5 years old he was already on the verge of death due to a cold, so she gives him 3 nutritional supplements. The young lady now claims that if he gets wet and doesn't take his medicine, she's afraid he might get sick again, after which the girl claims that she means whether she can go and give him medicine. The secretary realizes that it is going to rain and wonders whether the young lady really needs to go right now. He understands the girl's concern, but wonders if it's urgent and then says sure. Well, he claims that he will go with her, because you can't leave the emperor's guest alone. Then the secretary turns to the butler and tells him to prepare a carriage for him, but the main character says no. To which the secretary turns around in shock and looks at her, and the young lady claims that she would like to ride a horse and not a carriage, because she hasn't ridden through the forest for a long time. The guy then looks at the young lady and then says that they will do as she wishes and prepare the horses. Not long after, they are already riding through the forest on horseback, and His Highness is at the estate at that time, and the main knight asks for simplification, but claims that the rain is too heavy and it is impossible to travel on a cart. The man understands that he has problems believing that the boy will not see the bear, and they will not have time to return before sunset. He remembers how the young lady said that if he is trying to take care of her, then she has no regrets towards him, and now he tells the knight that it is clear and he can go. And he puts his hand on his forehead and realizes that he has more and more reasons to apologize. After which he approaches the boy and apologizes, but claims that they are unlikely to see bears. The young man says that everything is fine and then smiles brightly, and the emperor then asks if he wants to see their bear, to which the boy asks if there are bears there, and the emperor replies that of course there is one. A short time later, the two of them approach the giant bear, and the boy then asks if this is a real bear, and the emperor answers that yes and asks if this is the first time he has seen it. The young man then thinks that this is a real bear, but when he touches it, he realizes that it is cold and hard. And then he turns to the emperor and asks why this bear doesn't move, but the man replies that he can't, and the boy asks why. And the emperor then replies that this is because that bear is no longer alive, and the boy is then completely shocked. In a shaking voice, he asks why the bear died, and the emperor then doesn't even know what to answer, after which he looks at the boy's eyes, which are almost glowing, waiting for his question, and he understands that the moment of glory in the past turned into such a failure, because now he looks like a villain. After which the man turns around, trying to find something to distract the boy, and says that this is his grandfather's hunting rifle. He shows the boy the gun and says that it is an old model and it has almost no filling, so it's almost like a toy, but the boy doesn't really like it, after which the emperor tries to find something else. And then the young man is almost crying, and His Highness notices this. At the same moment, he is accosted by the knight who has been there from the very beginning, and he claims that there are hounds in this mansion, after which the emperor realizes that this is his chance and asks the boy if he wants to look at the dogs. The kid then asks if he will look at the puppy, and the knight and the emperor exchange glances at each other, after which His Highness lifts the boy in his arms and tells the knight to bring the dog to the reading room, to which he agrees. And a little time later, the boy is already standing near the fireplace next to the dog. He lets her smell him. Then he says the command for the dog to give him a paw, and she does so, after which he even licks the boy, and from there he falls to the floor, laughing and saying that he is ticklish. The emperor then asks the knight if this is dangerous, and he replies that don't answer, this is the most obedient dog. After which the emperor turns to the boy and says that they can play in the corridor, and the kid asks if this is true. Well, the man just smiles and says that of course, after which he turns to one of the servants and tells him to bring the toy so that they can help them play together. The boy then runs away with the dog and thanks His Highness as he leaves the room. Then these two breathe a sigh of relief. The boy throws the ball to the dog and she immediately rushes after it and then brings it back. The guy then pets the dog and says that this is a great job, but suddenly it starts to rain outside, and the boy realizes that his mother asked him to come back before dinner, but he thinks that you have a high status as an emperor, and she told him to listen to him. However, suddenly the ball jumps out of the boy's hands, and the dog starts running after him, after which the guy also runs into the forest. And the servant, seeing this through the window, screams after the young master. The main character at this time is still racing on her horse, and the secretary screams that the rain is too strong and it is dangerous, so let Estella slow down. But when a girl doesn't do this, the man wonders if she really doesn't hear or is just pretending. But this is suspicious because it doesn't look like simple anxiety at all. And perhaps everything was strange from the very beginning. No one expected such a last thing from Empress Dowager, and the princess, who could not know anything, avoided being wanted for 2 months. And when she showed up, the Duke of Leston began to act. And the man wonders if this is all part of the plan. But then he doesn't understand why the girl is so worried about this child. She needs to find out, and also understand His Highness's attitude towards these two. When the young lady's horse jumps up a little, the secretary asks what's going on, and the main character then apologizes and says that she was dizzy, after which the man asks if she is okay and maybe then she should take a break. Well, the girl claims that it is better to get to the mansion faster, to which he agrees, and when he begins to set off on a horse and wants to say something else. However, when he doesn't see the young lady near him, he turns around and sees that she is behind him, and then asks what's wrong. But the main character then, with tears in her eyes, realizes that time is up and the effect of the potion has ended. The emperor at this time asks how this happened, and the boy with the dog only looks down guiltily, and the young man claims that he was playing with the dog in the rain. After which the emperor finally sighs and then asks if there are any clothes for the child. The servant claims that no, and even past emperors did not take their children there. After which the emperor claims that he will have to listen to this one, and the boy also goes to the fireplace and then sits down, his clothes completely wet. The servant then claims that the boy should be dried off, and the emperor says that he should let him shine and order the servant to bring a towel. After this, the emperor wipes the boy's head and says that he will get sick if he doesn't dry himself, and so will the dog. The boy, hearing these words, immediately snatches the towel from the man's hands and claims that he will wipe everything off, after which he begins to dry the dog. The emperor thinks that he was wondering why his eyes smell so bright and he looks like Estella. Well, then he sees how the color of the baby's eyes begins to change. At this time, the main character has already arrived at the place with the secretary, and he apologizes for the suddenness, and then they ask if His Highness and the young master are inside. The servant claims that yes and offers to go inside, after which they are listened to with the help of towels. And the main character understands that if she had arrived just 30 minutes earlier, everything would have been different. After this, the secretary knocks on His Highness's room, but since he does not answer, he asks for forgiveness and only opens the door. His Highness asks Bellion if this is the case when he sees the young lady behind the secretary. Her face changes a little, and the main character understands that she hoped that this would not happen. However, most likely the emperor already knew about everything. Well, the man just throws his cape over her shoulders and then asks the secretary what happened. The main character then looks in shock towards the fireplace and sees that the boy has fallen asleep there. The man claims that he got wet in the rain while playing with the dog and fell asleep while drying off near the fireplace, and maybe he needs some fuel because the wood still burns. But the main character, looking at his facial expression, understands that it is normal, after which she asks if she can take the boy into the room, and the man replies that yes and let her warm herself up too. She's shaking all over. The young lady then says that she is fine and then asks for forgiveness, and goes with the boy to the room. When they enter it, the young man opens his eyes, and Mom asks if this is it. The young lady then says that yes, and she is there so everything will be fine. The girl understands that, judging by the emperor's reaction, the child fell asleep before the color changed, and she was very lucky. The main character hugs her son and realizes that his identity has not yet been revealed. He asks if they came all this way to see the child, after which he thinks a little and asks if the boy is very sick. The secretary claims that he doesn't really understand why she came here, and then thinks that it was unexpected. But the man doesn't suspect them, and it's not at all like him. Miss Estella recently said that there was little time left and she used strange plants to catch the criminal, so he doesn't understand how an ordinary lady knows this. And she should have the medications now, so he should check. But about this time, someone informs His Highness that Miss Estella has arrived, and the main character enters the hall. His Highness and the secretary are a little surprised when they see her, and then a young man with dark red hair approaches her, and the main character says that there was only this dress. The emperor apologizes for taking her child without asking and claims that they were planning to return quickly, but the rain intensified. The girl claims that everything is fine and children cannot sit within 4 walls for a long time, and the man then claims that he heard she brought him medicine and then asks if he is very sick. The main character then understands that this seems to be a misunderstanding and then claims that the disease is not very dangerous. But grandfather said that sometimes weak children like her mother are born in grandmother's house. The emperor then remembers that Estella's mother fell into eternal sleep due to an accident, but suddenly someone enters the room and tells His Highness that a message has arrived from the Den's mansion. The secretary then thinks that if it's Den's, it's a little strange, and the emperor asks what happened. After which, the servant claims that Kahlenberg seems to have gotten worse. The emperor then asks in shock what he is talking about. The servant claims that a few days ago he was paralyzed due to illness, and the dizziness became stronger. The main character then begins to cry in shock and says that her grandfather suffered because of her. After all, he always felt bad, and now he also went to foreign lands. His Highness and the secretary glance at each other, and the young lady thinks that, thank the gods, everything is going according to plan. Her grandfather was always healthy beyond his years, and he never even got sick. But he is a former war hero who was even more energetic than her. But in the last letter, she was worried about headaches and chronic illness, and believed that a man could pull this off. And now everything has worked out. So the main character asks His Highness if she can ask for a favor. The man then replies that yes, let her speak, and the girl claims that if he allows it. She asks if she can take Theo and go to the Dan's mansion. The young lady had a plan that she would first take the baby out of Kaizen's sight under the pretext of seeing his grandfather, after which they would come to the mansion, and her grandfather would feel unwell. He writes a letter asking him to leave his grandson at home, and only she will accompany Kaizen, because no one will force a 5-year-old child and a sick old man to go. The girl now claims that she would like to take care of her grandfather herself, and if he sees Theo, he will feel better. The secretary understands that there is not a single reason to refuse just in case, and he bites his lip. But suddenly the emperor says no, and he doesn't think so, after which they claim that they will all go together, because if they hurry, they will get there in 4 days. The main character then thinks why he is doing this, and tells His Highness that she does not want to burden him, because if he gives her a carriage, then she will take the child and go. But the man says that they will go together because he cannot let her go with a small child, and the main character thinks that this is not why they stayed in Marin's castle. Initially, it was due to rain. But the Kaizen she knows is not the kind of person who will change the schedule just for this reason, so there must be something else here. And the main character understands that she can no longer insist, so everything is fine. And if nothing changes, then they will come to Den's and then leave, and she will simply be more careful for 4 days longer, after which she thanks His Highness. And a little time later, the boy is already saying goodbye to the dog. The main character tells the boy that this place is her home. And then the guy with tears in his eyes wants to say something. The young lady then realizes that he is usually not so stubborn, but at this time the emperor approaches them and asks what is happening there. After he understands the whole situation, he says that the boy can take the dog with him if he wants, and it will be a gift to him, to which the boy sincerely smiles. But the main character then turns to His Highness and says that she will appreciate this, but the boy may accidentally harm the dog due to his age, but then they are both in danger. Well, the man claims that he watched for a long time and does not think that this could happen, because the child is very careful with the dog, and it is well trained so that nothing threatens anyone. And the main character then tries to argue something else. Well, His Highness then claims that he apologizes to her and to this child and hopes that they will accept this gift as a change, but if they do not want to, then he will try to convince the boy. The main character is then a little surprised by this. Then she says no, and she is grateful to His Highness. The man then tells the boy that this is a good job and that he shouldn't worry about his aunt. And shouldn't he be kinder to her? The boy then agrees with His Highness, and while the emperor strokes his head, the girl tells Theo that they have to go, so let him sit in stripes. To which the boy agrees and thanks His Highness. When they get into the carriage, the boy claims that now the dog's name will be Damn. The main character then turns to the boy and asks why he called him that. And the young man claims that he has wool the color of pancakes, and the young lady then understands that it is clear that pancake is the Eastern name for pancakes. Well, then she realizes that she almost forgot about the most important thing, faith. There is one more problem. After which the young lady takes out a bottle of potion and realizes that this is not enough. But they were too late and she didn't have time to make a new medicine, so until she finds the ingredients and prepares it. Then they are in danger. A little time later, they stop in one of the villages, and when the young lady enters the house with the boy, then the secretary watches her with a cold gaze. And when the young lady enters the room, she is a little surprised. She understands that this is some kind of unkempt guest room, but this is a small village on the outskirts, and apparently the situation is not very good for them. Well, the boy then looks out the window and tells his mother to look, because from there you can see the city. The young lady then tells the boy to be careful, but when she looks out the window, she notices something strange. The girl is very wary and understands that this city is infected. Innis fever is a disease native to the northeastern part of the continent and is highly contagious. Silver plum dieback is a representative syndrome. And now the main character, looking at the dead plum branch, thinks that it is the silver one on the left. And this is how they usually determine the beginning of an epidemic in the Empire, but no one knows yet. Or the main character thinks that this might all be a setup. After this, one of the maids comes into the room and greets the lady. She claims that she has come to inform that the water for the bath is ready, after which they ask if she will go and take a bath now. Ask about something, but then decides that it's better not to do it, and then claims that it's okay and they'll go wash now. When the maid takes them downstairs, she apologizes and claims that the castle is so old. Then he points to a wooden bathtub and says that some people can take a bath there. She also points out that there is a locker room nearby, and after they change clothes, they can leave them in the basket, but they will wash them. The main character then thanks her, but when she enters the room, she tells Theo to come to her for a minute. The boy then, with a smile on his face, goes to his mother, after which they, already changed, leave the room, but the maid leads the two. She thinks why they need a doll, after which she turns to the lady and asks for forgiveness. But she claims that if she takes the toy with her, it will get wet. And she said that the castle is old. The main character then tenses up a little, but then says that of course, after which she turns to Theo and says that she will have to leave Livian there. After which the boy holds out his toy and tells the granny to take care of it, to which the woman tells the young gentleman and claims that this toy will stay in her room. The main character then says that they will go and when they leave. Then the maid with coldness in her eyes looks at the toy and begins to feel it. She realizes that there is nothing there, and she thought that there was something hidden inside. After which she immediately goes to these people's room and begins to search everything. But even looking into the box, she finds nothing and only gets angry. A little time later, she approaches one of the guards and says that she checked everything and found nothing unusual, and he asks if she found anything even in the medical box. And the woman claims that there were ordinary over-the-counter medications and there was nothing dangerous. Rusty then says that he understands and she can go, and the woman realizes that they promise to reward her if she finds anything suspicious. They told her to pretend to be a maid and search the ladies' room, but when she asked why it had to be her, the men were told that she was the only pharmacist in the city, and the woman understands that although there were a couple of unusual medicinal herbs, they are not poisonous, so everything should be fine. At this time, the main character and her son are in the bath, and she begins to sort out her hair, after which she takes out a bottle of potion from there and thinks that it was close. But she immediately guessed when she approached the woman. After all, the smell of herbs emanated from her body, and her fingers had dark green spots. And this is clearly a person who deals with herbs every day, and she cannot be a maid, because if she worked there, she would have already noticed signs of fever. This fever is fatal, but can be easily treated in the early stages. And they have a pharmacist, so even such a backward village is still okay. But the only one who could send her to the pharmacist is the secretary, and the main character thinks that this is so obvious and does not give her even a moment of peace. After which she turns to Theo and asks if he will take the medicine right now, to which the boy agrees, and when the young lady instills drops for him, that tells him to be patient a little longer. And then he asks his mother if his eyes will turn red again if he doesn't take the medicine. The woman replies that yes, but no one should know about it, after which she asks the boy if he will tell anyone. However, the young man then only asks why and whether red eyes are bad. But His Highness the Emperor also has red eyes, and the boy asks why he can't have the same ones. The main character then doesn't even understand how to answer this and thinks that the boy has never asked about this before, and perhaps the meeting with Kaysen influenced him. The boy then just bows his head and asks if he can know, to which the main character is even more surprised. After which she turns to Theo and asks if he remembers the story about the farm and the magic balls that he read. The boy says that yes, the balls that the farmer picked up were very precious, and if anyone found out, but no one did, they would have disappeared. The main character then claims that everything is correct and they are very special and rare, so they must be hidden just like his eyes. The boy only smiles in response to this, and the young lady says that they are very special and rare, so he cannot show them to other people. The boy then asks, "How is His Highness?" And the young lady says that he is a very strong person, and they, like farmers from a fairy tale, have to hide them, after which the boy says that he understands, and the main character says that he should not tell anyone, then asks if he agrees, and the young man says that he will not tell anyone. Then the main character kisses his cheek and says what a good boy he is, but then she realizes a little sadly that someday he will find out the truth, but it's too early because he will find out about it when he grows up and can understand. However, when the main character is already reaching for soap, she looks at her hand, understands that there are red spots on it. A short time later, His Highness asks if the epidemic has begun, and the knight replies that everything is correct and he checked, after which he claims that a serious epidemic has begun called Inez fever, so he thinks that they will have to look for another route. His Highness then asks how long it will take, and the knight claims that if they go through the south, it will be about 3 days longer, after which His Highness asserts that it will not work, and then asks whether they have already begun to treat the infected. And the knight replies that not yet because the villages are under quarantine due to lack of medicine. The emperor then realizes that they are trapped without treatment, and then orders to allocate soldiers and money for the village, and also to send doctors and pharmacists to the surrounding area if necessary, to which the guy agrees. And at this time, the man clenches his fists and thinks that the harder he tries, the worse things will get, and the infected areas will expand. Over the past few decades, there has not been a single worthy ruler, and the emperors of yesteryear have only increased in power and territory. The last of them were completely dolls in the hands of the Lestons and other aristocrats. Therefore, the man understood that he needed to become better than them and develop the country and also lead forward so that this would never happen again and so that no one else would become a victim. Now he is knocking on the room, but suddenly a young lady comes out of it. She is a little worried and asks if it is His Highness, but then realizes that she needs to be vigilant. And he apologizes to him and then claims that he doesn't feel very well, and the guy asks if something happened. The girl then replies that yes and tells His Highness that she thinks she has a fever. The man, hearing this, immediately grabs the young lady and asks how bad it is because he needs to call a doctor. He still thinks that he needs to become better than the past emperors, but he does not understand how he is different because he cannot even take care of the people around him. Well, the main character then turns to His Highness and asks Togo to calm down, after which she says that she does not have Inez fever. His Highness is a little surprised by this and asks what she is talking about, and a little later the girl shows her hand to the doctor, who says that it looks like it's a normal fever, because Inez's fever is accompanied by black spots, and this is different from Lady Estella's symptoms, and while it's not contagious, so he doesn't have to worry, and rest and medicine will put the young lady on her feet. The emperor then says that first of all, the manager should be informed and told to send more people to care for the sick, and also the sleeping room should be more comfortable. Well, the main character then claims that she doesn't want to change the bedroom, and his concern is unnecessary. The emperor then asks what she is talking about, but the doctor then screams that she should not talk like that, after which he asks whether it is possible to be treated right in this room, because this is not conceivable. The knight also turns to Lady Estella and says that this is true because even the most common fever can get worse if left untreated, so let her think again. And the emperor then only asks why the girl decided so, to which the main character only asks her question and asks whether infectious diseases are not spreading in this territory now, and this must be Inez fever. The emperor then asks if she knew about the young lady answering there, and as soon as they got there, she saw a withered myrtle in the window and then became suspicious. Well, in her thoughts, she adds that she was finally convinced after Kaysen's reaction, because he was greatly confused by the word fever. The knight then asks what this has to do with the young lady's illness, and she claims that in times like these, when public sentiment is unstable, rumors tend to be easily misleading. Therefore, if it becomes known that there is a person with a fever next to the emperor, then unrest will begin among the people. The emperor claims that, in addition, if rumors spread that a sick person is staying here, then this village will also suffer. The emperor also looks at the doctor, and the main character tells them not to worry because she has already made a cure for fever once, and let them only give her permission to extract the necessary ingredients. The young lady also understands that her illness will come in handy because she will have a reason to go out under the pretext of collecting ingredients. The doctor asks for forgiveness, but wants to say that the lady is right, and nevertheless it is worth playing it safe and putting the child to sleep in the next room. The young lady then asks if Theo heard, because today he will have to sleep separately from his aunt, so she asks if the boy can. The young man then agrees and says that then he will sleep with a pancake. And the emperor also rises from his seat and says that they will do as she wants. The young lady then thanks His Highness, but when she looks at the secretary, she realizes that his face has not changed. After which she claims that she also previously met with a pharmacist and thinks that she can get some herbs from her, and the knight asks if the pharmacist came there. Now the young lady thinks that, judging by the expression on the secretary's face, he could have predicted this, and the young lady with a smile on her face claims that she said that she came in for a short time because there was not enough manpower, so the girl asks if she can go see her tomorrow afternoon. The emperor says yes, and just let her take escort and guards with her. The girl then says that it's good, and then turns to the secretary and asks if she can ask him for an escort. The next day, the young lady, already with a basket, collects all the necessary herbs and remembers what the butler told her, that if she goes to the back of the castle, she will find the hunting grounds and grass field belonging to the lord. The herbs that are not there are in the pharmacist's storage, so let him know if you need anything. The young lady then realizes that it seems to be here and then turns to Mr. Bellion. Then she asks if he wants to tell her anything, but the guy just asks with a smile on his face what she's talking about. However, the girl claims that if he continues to pretend, he will leave her no choice but to inform His Majesty the Emperor about the uninvited guests who searched her room. The man then realizes that the young lady guessed everything and claims that Mrs. Estella is right and very smart. The young man claims that even if it's late, he admits and asks for her forgiveness, because he was just wondering what happened in the villa last time, and he was worried whether she was hiding some kind of illness in the child. The main character is a little surprised by this, and the secretary bows and says that that's all, and he sincerely apologizes. The young lady then asks if he was able to dispel his doubts, and the guy says that of course, and he will no longer act so rudely. And the young lady then smiles and says that since he admits that it was rude, he will not refuse to pay for the damage. The young man listens and is a little surprised, and then asks how he should pay. And the young lady claims that unfortunately I don't need anything from him now, but if I need help later, she will tell him. And the young lady adds in her thoughts that, simply put, she will make this his weakness and use the right moment for herself. The secretary now claims that he understands and is able to do her a favor, and the young lady then raises her finger and says one more thing. After all, she needs to find a lot of medicinal herbs, and since he came with her, maybe they will look for them together. The guy then asks, a little surprised, what she's talking about, and the young lady then takes something out of her bag, and she tells him not to worry because she grabbed a hoe for him too. The secretary then asks, even more surprised, what she is talking about, and the girl understands that he is a rich man, having never known him with such difficulty, after which she asks what he is worth and tells him to help him quickly. And a little later, the guy is already working with his hoe. The young lady realizes that, as expected, she does not need to worry about him, and while he is distracted, she needs to find the necessary herbs. When the young lady is looking for them, she walks around the forest, but suddenly she hears someone walking behind her and turns around. Then she sees His Highness there with white flowers, after which she asks if it is His Majesty and asks what he is doing there. The man claims that he came to help because it can be dangerous in the forest, and the young lady claims that this place is just a few minutes' walk from the castle, and the emperor says that it doesn't matter because it's still dangerous to be alone. And the girl then says that Bellion and a man asking if she thinks you are in an emergency so he can help her. And the girl thinks that this is also true, but it is problematic because if Kaysen is nearby, she will not be able to freely look for the herbs she needs. At this time, the emperor hands the young lady flowers and tells her to take them. And after the girl asks what it is, he claims that he asked the doctor to tell him what herbs can be useful for fever, and while he was walking, he saw these flowers. Looks like healing. The young lady looks at these flowers and thanks His Highness, however. She claims that these are ordinary flowers, and the guy then asks if this is true. But the young lady realizes that it looks like he really wanted to help. After which she understands that then she can try to distract him by searching for herbs like Belliana. However, the girl says that the medicinal herb that she now needs is really very similar to these flowers, and she asks if he can help find it because it has a shorter stem and fewer flowers than these. The emperor then becomes a little embarrassed and says that, of course, after which the two of them begin to look for different herbs. A short time later, the emperor already holds out one of the herbs and asks if Astel talked about it. The young lady says no and less about that piece of paper, after which the emperor says that it's clear and once again plunges into work. A little more time later, he already jumps out of the bushes with another grass, and when the main character looks at her a little longer, he asks if he missed it this time too. The young lady then replies that yes, and at this time the secretary comes up to them and tells Mrs. Astel that he brought the medicinal herb that she was talking about. But not having time to properly finish his sentence, he is very surprised because he sees His Highness. He does not understand what His Highness is doing there, and then sees how the emperor looks at him with a piercing gaze, and then leaves his large bunch of grass on the stipulation that he will leave it to Mrs. Astel and leave. After which he runs away as fast as he can, and the main character says that His Highness should not be upset because there are simply many similar flowers in nature, and the man then asks when the young lady learned this. The girl replies that a pharmacist lived next to the girl's estate and they met, after which they became friends and she learned from him, however, unofficially, because she was in charge of taking care of the estate. The emperor then says that it's a pity that the young lady doesn't understand what he's talking about, after which the man adds that if she had studied officially, she would definitely have succeeded, because she always succeeded in everything she took on. The main character then says that he is not quite, and His Highness is a little surprised by this and remembers one situation. 8 years ago, they were riding horses, and one of the servants stated that it was a great honor for the family that the crown prince was celebrating his 18th birthday in their hunting grounds. He turned to His Highness and asked if he knew the most famous fairy tale of this area, and the man asked what fairy tale he was talking about, after which the subordinate said that since ancient times they say that in the local pond there lives a fairy who gives love to everyone who makes a wish, and this story was once told by a man. The emperor thought that this was nonsense, and were there really still people who believed in such fables? Well, the main character then said that this was an interesting story and asked what happened to that man, and the servant then said that he had a beautiful lover just like Madame Astel. The emperor, looking at the young lady, turned and then sighed, and a little time later he was already hunting. But suddenly, when His Highness went out into the open area, he thought, was this really some kind of field? After which he decided to ride his horse forward. However, suddenly he jumped up and the emperor saw that they were on the ice. Looking at how the horse broke through the ice with its hooves more and more, His Highness realized that he was mistaken. And a little time later, he was already in the lake. The main character immediately ran up to him and tried to save him. After the man was already on the surface, the young lady excitedly asked if everything was okay. She also said that thank God he was not hurt, but suddenly the ice behind the young lady began to crack, and at the same moment, she fell into the lake. After a little time, His Highness already carried the girl in his arms into the mansion and then screamed for a doctor to be brought quickly. The maids, looking at the lady in the arms of the crown prince, excitedly began to run around the estate trying to somehow help, and a little later the doctor reported that it was a fever. The maid whispered and asked what the girl was doing alone on the lake. And the emperor, remembering the story of that servant about a fairy who gives love to everyone who makes a wish, thinks about who will fulfill it. A little time later, the main character begins to wake up, and at this time one of the servants comes into the room and asserts to His Highness that it is already late and he should take a break and rest. His Highness then looked at the servant with a slightly frightened look, after which he rose from his seat and said that it was good. And the man then touched the young lady's face and then said that he would come tomorrow. And the next day, when he was already going to the main character's chambers, he only heard something the maid was talking about, screaming. She also asked why she was only now saying that His Highness would come to her and let the maid prepare her now. But the girl said that the princess couldn't do anything because she still wasn't feeling very well, to which the girl asked how she could meet His Highness in this form. Tried to escape with tears in her eyes. His Highness watched all this from behind the doors, and a knight passing by asked why he did not enter. However, the man then turned around and said that he was going to continue the hunt that was interrupted yesterday. Sometimes the knight said that he was not going to hunt today, to which the man replied that he had changed his mind. But he seemed to be tormented by doubts about this, and now, looking at the young lady, His Highness takes off his cape and covers the girl with it. When the main character asks His Majesty what he is doing, then he tells the girl to put it on because her body is also weak now. The main character then thanks him for his concern and then rises from her seat. However, when the young lady already wants to leave, then His Highness grabs her hand, and the young lady looks at him and thinks what he wants. And the man claims that he found a medicinal herb, and when the young lady looks near her feet, she sees these flowers. And she claims that this is exactly what she is looking for, after which the man carefully tears them off and brings them to the hands of the young lady. When the girl takes this flower, the emperor hears the secretary calling them, and the man says that it looks like it's time to return, after which he asks the young lady if she found everything she needed. The main character, looking at the flower in her hands, says that yes, they can go back. But when they come back to the house, the main character asks what happened there. After all, her bedroom now has brand new furniture and a beautiful bed. The maid says that His Majesty ordered her bedroom to be neatly furnished, and the main character thinks what it means to carefully furnish it, because it's like a different room. And at this time, the boy turns to his aunt and says that his room has also changed. And even Pancake got a bed. The dog immediately lies down on the bed and turns contentedly on it, and the boy says that he likes his new room. The main character then turns to the maid and says that she needs to go away for a while, and then asks if she can look after the child, and the girl agrees. A little time later, the main character is already making 5 vials of the potion, and tasting the contents from one bowl, she realizes that this is enough for medicine for the eyes and for fever. A little time later, she comes to her room and sees His Majesty there, along with her son and dog. The young lady asks His Majesty how this happened, and the man claims that he came to offer her dinner and played with the dog a little, and then the child fell asleep. The main character then asks for forgiveness for the inconvenience caused by the child, and the man then says that he will take the boy to another room. At this time, the young man wakes up and says the word mom. This causes the main character to drop the boy's teddy bear, and the emperor at this time asks if he just said mom. The young lady takes the boy in her arms and says that yes, and sometimes in his dreams he calls his parents that way, but no matter how small he is, Theo understands what mom and dad are. The emperor, looking at the boy, thinks what a poor thing he is and then says that it's good that this child has a Stella. It's very sad that he can't see his parents for the rest of his life. After that, the main character just leaves, the dog closes the door, and the dog approaches her and sniffs it a little excitedly, and the girl says that everything is fine. Then he repeats again that everything will be fine. The next day she sees the boy and tells him to wake up. The boy then asks his mother if it's already morning, and the woman answers that it is and says that today they are leaving this place, after which she asks if he is ready to instill medicine, and the boy says yes. After which the young lady uses these drops, and a little time later, while in the carriage, she thinks that they have finally arrived, and at least later than she would like. The young lady, looking out the window, realizes that this is the Dench residence where her grandfather is now located. While the young lady and her son are driving into the residence in a carriage, a lady with yellow hair is riding in one of the carriages. When the main character enters the estate, one of the maids takes her to her grandfather, and when the boy sees his grandfather, he immediately runs up to him. The man immediately hugs his grandson, and the main character turns to the maid and says that from now on, she will take care of her grandfather, so she can go. After which the main character apologizes for being late and asks if it was hard. The man claims that they were hospitable to him so that there was no inconvenience. However, the young servant continued to obsessively take care of him, and it was difficult to drive him out. Well then, he asks the young lady why they were so late and if nothing happened. And the main characters don't think about how to explain everything better and then tell the whole story. The man then puts his hand on his granddaughter's arm and says it was hard for her. The young lady says that now it's all over and he'll stay there for a few more days, and then she'll send him and Theo home. While the boy is playing with the dog, the grandfather says that it's good, and it will be great if everything stays like this, and the girl says that it will definitely happen and don't let him worry. After all, no matter what happens, she needs to send Theo home as soon as possible, and for this she first needs to get permission from the Kaiser. And the young lady's grandfather at this time says that he remembered that someone was waiting for the girl there, and the main character then asked in surprise who it was. At this time, the emperor sits at his desk, and the secretary informs His Highness that there are rumors that the Duke of Reston secretly transferred funds. The emperor then asks if this is true, and then says that on second thought it would be time to check the public safety of the north, after which he orders the commander of the Ranberg Knights to take several knights and move north. The Knights of Ranberg are the most important force in the capital, and those who are preparing for an uprising feel that the absence of knights is a great opportunity and will then fall into a trap. And the secretary now says that it's good, and at the same time he will tell them to actually stay close to the capital. And he himself understands that, at this rate, the Duke of Reston will become a traitor, and he does not understand what will happen to Mrs. Astel then. According to imperial law, all relatives of those who committed high treason are subject to execution. The emperor, now looking at the document, asks what a dance evening is, and the servant claims that Sir Roderick, the manager of this castle, has prepared a welcoming banquet for His Majesty, and the evening of dancing will be part of it. The man then claims that there is no need for useless events, and the secretary then understands that he thought so, after which he claims that then he will cancel everything, and the emperor then shudders a little and then claims that an evening of dancing sounds good. He already imagines a young man dressed in a dance costume and then declares that there will be an evening of dancing. The secretary is then very surprised and asks what the gentleman is talking about, and he only continues to work on the documents with an imperturbable face. The secretary, looking at his master, thinks that he hates this, so why did he agree now? When the main character was in the capital, the balls took place quite often, but the truth is now it is unclear whether it was for a greeting or for something else. At this time, someone knocks on the emperor's office and the man tells him to come in. And the servant then tells His Majesty that Lady Florin asks for an audience with him. The man then becomes a little wary and asks who came, and the servant claims that the girl has just arrived and said that she would like to meet him. The emperor then understands that this is probably because of his sister Marion, after which he says, "Let the girl come in and I act with black hair and enter the room." Lady Florin is the second daughter of the Minister of State of the Marquis of Courtroom and the most influential candidate for the position of the future empress. Now the girl bows to His Highness and greets him, after which they ask him to forgive her rudeness because she is here on behalf of her father. The emperor then asks what the Marquis wants to tell him, and the young lady claims that the father wants to apologize for not being able to raise his daughter properly, and asks His Highness to severely punish her sister. Kaysen then wonders if he is going to abandon his daughter and if he wants to lose his hard-earned position, but he is no different from the previous great nobles. But the girl then tells His Majesty that she does not agree with her father, and he asks if she is asking for favor, to which the girl replies yes and then says that I would like to propose to him. The emperor of such words becomes wary and thinks about what she wants to say. And the main character at this time is surprised by the guest who was waiting for her. It turns out to be a young lady who now runs up to the girl and addresses her as mistress. The main character then asks if this is Hannah, and realizes that this girl was her personal maid with whom she grew up side by side. But 6 years ago, when she left the imperial palace, their connection was severed. The main character told her maid to return to the imperial palace, and since she made a request to the Empress Dowager, everything would be fine with her. The newlywed then tried to dissuade her mistress, and the main character, with a bitter expression on her face, apologized and said that she no longer wanted to live this life. The girl now claims that after the mistress left, she did not stop searching, but she had no idea where she went. Grandfather, the young lady, then shudders a little and realizes that it was he who hid his granddaughter, and the main character at this time takes the hands of the maids in her own and apologizes, after which she claims that she asked her grandfather to keep this a secret. But the maid then tells the mistress not to apologize and claims that she just wanted to see her again, so she immediately came running as soon as she found out that the mistress was there. The main character turns to Hannah, but suddenly Theo looks out from behind her dress and asks her aunt who it is. The young lady then tells Theo that it is Hannah, But then she begins to worry and realizes that the girl has known Kazan since childhood, so this is dangerous because she can see the similarities between them. But the maid only claims that she heard from the Marquis and the boy, the son of Mr. Sigmund. After which she greets Mr. Theo and says that her name is Hannah. The boy then also greets her, and the girl then says how cute he is and asks if he likes the cookies. The main character then thinks that it looks like she was worrying in vain, and a little time later they are already in the garden with cups of tea. The maid asks if the lady will return to the east when she finishes her business, and the main character says that this is true and asks if Hannah is still working in the imperial palace. However, the girl replies that no, and now she wants to follow Mrs. Estella, and the main character is surprised by this. The maid claims that she really regrets that she lost her mistress 6 years ago, and although she was her mistress, she was first and foremost a friend, and these years spent in the palace without her were not bad, but nothing could cover the loneliness from the loss of her only friend. Therefore now with a smile on her face, she tells the mistress not to leave her this time. The main character is then worried about turning to Hannah and thinks that her thoughts were only occupied with her own problems, and she did not think about the maid at all. But the girl, as the personal servant of the deposed empress, probably also had a hard time. And now the main character is asked if she is sure, but the girl says that yes, and she has already decided everything. The young lady then thanks the maid and asks her to take care of her, to which the maid smiles and thanks the mistress. And the main character at this time is thinking how well everything turned out, because she was just thinking about hiring a worker when her grandfather gets his pension back and she can trust Hannah. Well, suddenly someone addresses the young lady, and when she turns around, she sees that it is the secretary. The man asks Mrs. Astel for forgiveness and asks if she would give him a minute. The main character then asks what happened, and the secretary claims that this is connected with Mrs. Marion. When they are alone, the secretary claims that Lady Florin came and made a request. She claimed that she wanted the emperor to be given the opportunity to formally apologize for the incident, personally in front of Mrs. Ostella, to whom sister brought trouble, and of course it would be more appropriate for the culprit himself to apologize, but they have what they have. So the girl asks, why don't they then determine the punishment? She asked His Highness about this, and the secretary understood that the younger sister was indeed much better than the elder. And the emperor then argued that, according to her logic, then the injured party should decide whether to give her a chance or not. After which he turned to Bellion and told him to go and find out Estella's opinion. And he also claims that if the girl refuses, he hopes that no revenge will follow on their part if their desire to apologize is sincere. The main character understands that she doesn't like it, but she needs to maintain a good relationship with a girl who can become an empress, after which she says that it's understandable, and she will meet Lady Marion. The lady with yellow hair is in prison at this time, and one of the servants tells her to come out because this is the order of the emperor. The main character, a short time later, is already sitting in front of her and realizes that she is actually surprised, because even though the girl committed a crime, she did not think that she would be treated so cruelly. Now the lady with yellow hair is trying to say something like an apology, but then she can't stand it. And she cries out that she is very sorry and then asks if they are all happy. The head knight then turns to Lady Marion and asks what she is doing. And the young lady then asks if Miss Marion didn't come there to seek mercy. The lady with yellow hair then asks what kind of mercy she is talking about because the emperor will decide what to do with her, but not this lady. After which she also says that she cannot be changed and she definitely overdid it a little. The main character then says that yes, and she overdid it. After all, she accused her of poisoning, but then the young lady asks if she thought that she and her whole family could die, and the lady with yellow hair says that she didn't think so. But the young lady understands that this girl didn't even think about the consequences, and this makes her even more infuriating. Now the main character claims that she is there only because of Marianne's filters. And if she continues to behave this way, then Lady Florin's efforts will be in vain, after which the main character asks if she has anything else she wants to say. And when the girl doesn't know what to say to her, the main character orders the knight to take her back. But the lady with yellow hair then screams at them not to do this. And at the last moment, when they are already dragging her away, she screams that the girl is just the one who was expelled from the place of the empress. At this time, the emperor enters the room. He saw all this and asks why the knight stopped, after which he says that they should take the prisoner away. I tell you that they obey His Majesty, after which they do so. When the lady with yellow hair passes by His Majesty, she looks at him. However, the man only looks coldly, in response to which the girl looks away. When the main character is left alone with the emperor, she realizes that the judges, by the look of him, heard everything. After which she turns to the man and says that the girl is still young, so don't let him be too harsh towards her. The man then tells the young lady that she is so inferior, and the main character thinks what he is talking about. After which she tells His Highness that he came there because he was afraid that she would treat Lady Marian too softly, but the man replies that that's not the only reason, and the main character asks why else. And His Highness, a little more redly, claims that he came to visit her maternal grandfather and the young lady, then asks what he is talking about, and is he really so busy with work that he's completely out of his mind. After this, the emperor comes to the grandfather and young lady's room and looks at him, but then he immediately bows and asks for forgiveness for the delay, after which he claims that he caused him a lot of trouble due to his circumstances. The young lady's grandfather then, a little puzzled, says that it's okay and he's already honored that His Highness personally visited him. The emperor then asks how about the man's health, and he thanks for the concern and claims that he is much better. The main character, looking at Kaizen's smile, thinks that she hasn't seen him like this for a long time. But she thought that his whole image was a complete lie and thought that he was only pretending to be friendly. But when the young lady thinks a little, the emperor pulls her out and asks where Theo is. The main character claims that he is playing with the dog in his room, and the emperor says that it is clear. But this child is so kind and well-mannered. The young lady's grandfather listens to all this and is a little surprised. And the emperor then claims that the guy is probably all like his father. Hey, grandfather. The young lady then remembers how the main character felt bad during pregnancy, and then he tells His Majesty that this is so, and Theo is very similar to his father, so he is very kind and polite, and if it weren't for this guy, he wouldn't have any impolite manners. The emperor then looks at the man, and the main character realizes that the father Kaizen is talking about is the son of the Marquis, and the child the Marquis is talking about is Astel. And the main character then observes this whole atmosphere and thinks that, simply put, he is very glad that their Theo does not look like an emperor. But the main character still thinks that he won't understand anything anyway, so why say it? And the emperor claims that he does not think there is a need to discuss this. After all, this can be offensive to the child's mother. The main character then realizes that it seems to him that it sounded like an insult to the mother of a commoner. And the young lady's grandfather says that he didn't know that His Majesty is such a caring person that he even thinks about the child's mother. But in his thoughts, he can no longer restrain himself and thinks that the man is worried about some maid after he treated his granddaughter like that. However, the emperor asks how it could be otherwise, since it was he who separated the mother from her child and made her suffer. And the man turns to His Majesty and asks if he wants to say that he personally creates problems for his granddaughter. The main character then asks these two to stop, after which her grandfather clears his throat and claims that he will finally say, in a senile manner, that every family has its own circumstances, so he asks to refrain from hasty conclusions. But the emperor claims that some things can only be understood by looking, and he must have overestimated the fallen hero. The main character then shakes herself, addressing His Majesty, and the emperor only turns to Astel and says that he will give her lands and an estate in the capital, so let her live there with the child. And of course they will hire servants and teachers there, because it will be better for her and Theo. The main character then can no longer stand it, and His Highness suddenly notices the boy entering the room. The main character begins to shout at His Majesty and claims that she does not want to live in the capital, so let him stop all this and return to his place. But suddenly, the boy turns to his aunt, and when the young lady turns around, she sees that the boy is almost crying. She immediately runs up to Theo, and the emperor decides to change the subject and says that he is going to hold a ball there. The main character then does not understand what he's talking about. His Highness feels a little awkward. But when the young lady asks if he is going to hold a ball, he only agrees and says that if she wants, she can come too because he will only be happy about it. The main character then looks at her son and then says that is good and then she will come, and the emperor then says that is great and thanks her. Well, then he looks at the boy and wonders if he's crying anymore. And then they bow to the main character and say that it's a big part of her to receive invitations from him. But the emperor then only whispers so that she does not scoff. The boy at this time has a luminous look. He says that he also wants to go to the ball. The boy says that he read fairy tales about this, and this is the same place where people dress beautifully and where everyone dances. And the emperor pats the boy on the head and says that he knows a lot. The main character raises her son and says that Theo is too small, and when he grows up, she will definitely take him with her. The emperor then wants to say that the boy is generally quite old, but when he sees the main character shaking her head, he says that he is not old enough, but if he wants to go to him, then he can hold it especially for the boy. The guy then asks if this is true, and the emperor says of course, and the young man then claims that he wanted to go to the ball, but then asks if he can then take a walk in the garden instead. After all, he wanted to go there, but he was told that he needed special permission from the emperor. The brunette now says that of course the boy can walk as much as he wants, and then asks if Astel will go too. After which, the main character agrees and goes with Theo to the garden. A little time later, these three are already walking through the garden, and the boy, looking into the water, admires it because it is very clean and beautiful. He also approaches one of the toads. Well, suddenly looking to the side, he sees some kind of building and asks his aunt what kind of strange house this is. The main character replies that this is not a house, but a pavilion, and the young man then asks what he is for. The young lady then claims that it was originally built to admire the work of Butt. The emperor immediately compliments it and claims that the pavilion is now used as an exhibition hall, after which he asks if the boy wants to look, and he agrees. But when they approach this place, only the castle leads, and the emperor claims that it looks like the person responsible for this place has gone somewhere, so they should look next time. The boy then looks out the window and says that it's a pity, and then asks what all these dishes are for. And the main character replies that this is just a decoration for people to look at, and things are stored there that are difficult to get, so they cannot be touched or played with, after which she asks if the boy understands, and he agrees. A little time later, the young man is already looking at the garden of flowers, and the main character, seeing how her son admires him, sits down next to him and says that when they return home, she will plant the same number of answers in their garden. When the boy asks if this is true, the young lady replies that yes, of course, and also offers to make a rod, although they will grow fish. The young man is then very happy about this, and the main character only laughs in response. The emperor claims that if she likes any flowers from there, he can send them. The young lady then asks if he will send them directly to the east, and the emperor then becomes a little embarrassed and remains silent as if in agreement. The main character then smiles and says that if she finds something really necessary there, she will inform him first and hope that he will fulfill her request. The emperor then also smiles and says that of course he will do it, and the young lady understands that the time will soon come, and the ball is her chance, because there she will ask permission to take care of Theo in front of many people. A little time later, they already enter one of the rooms, and grandfather, sitting at the table with a cup of tea, asks if they have arrived. The young lady, looking at her grandfather, asks why he spoke to His Majesty like that, because he might be misunderstood. But the young lady's grandfather doesn't seem very concerned about this and says, "Let him go and take him for an old snob and generally let him think what he wants." The main character then looks at the girl a little offended, which makes him start to get nervous and asks whether such a misunderstanding will not be beneficial. After all, this will make the story with the expulsion of the child's mother more believable, and the main character then sighs and says that she will not say that it is wrong. After which, she sits down at the table opposite her grandfather and apologizes, after which she claims that it is all because of her. The man says that for the sake of her and Theo, he is ready to endure this family shame. The man then remembers how he accepted her, took care of her while she was pregnant, and also how he helped her raise the baby. He also claims that his 2 children and grandson Sigmund left him, so now he only has a young lady with Theo. The main character then claims that there is also a brother Fritz, and the grandfather then asks what she's talking about because he hasn't contacted him for a long time. The main character then tries to say something, and the man claims that he knows and her father does not allow him, and the problem is that Fritz is too obedient. The main character remembers how she left home, and her brother then grabbed her hand and asked where the young lady was going. He also claimed that the girl would not do anything stupid and would simply beg her father for forgiveness. But the main character then only pulled out her hand and ran away. and now she says she can't help but agree with it. Grandfather is asked why His Majesty suddenly decided to visit him, because he is not one of those people who follows etiquette so precisely. The main character is then a little surprised herself, and says that she does not think that His Highness had any ulterior motives, and he always adheres to moral standards. The man then turns to his granddaughter and asks if she is taking his side again, and the main character asks which side. Well, then she sighs and says that thanks to him, a good chance has appeared, and there will be a lot of people at the ball, so even His Majesty will not be able to refuse her request. The grandfather then asks the main character if she will be okay. The young lady remembers all the gossip that happened after she ceased to be an empress, and how her father claimed that the family did not need a daughter who would not become one. However, Estella says with such a sad smile that yes, she will be fine. Grandfather then apologizes for not being able to help her, but claims that being there and seeing His Majesty live, he realized how strange it was that other people had not yet noticed. Similar he and Theo are, because the boy looks just like his father, and so much so that the young lady's father can understand everything because he is cunning and intelligent and has also been visiting the imperial palace since Kaizen's earliest years, so if he sees Theo, he can guess everything. The young lady then says that her father will never see the boy because she is not going to take him to the capital under any circumstances. The lady with yellow hair is still in prison at this time and throws her plate of food. Her sister approaches her. Well, Marianne then just screams, "What the hell is she doing?" Because the girl said that she came there to help, and now she is humiliating her like that. The lady with black hair then claims that she definitely gave her little sister a chance to improve, but she missed it. And the yellow-haired lady then screams out what she should have done, and whether her sister wants to say that she should have begged that girl for forgiveness. The lady with blue eyes then thinks how weak-minded her sister is because she can't do anything normally, after which she turns to the lady with yellow hair and says that she will try to find another way, so let the girl remain calm for now, after which she turns to one of the maids and claims that she will talk to the guard to distract them from the maid while she brings her sister some normal food and cleans up the mess. After which she hands over the keys, and the maid obeys the mistress. At this time, the lady with yellow hair is biting her nails and thinking what kind of sister she is in Dubai. Maybe she doesn't want to help on purpose, because she is afraid that she will take away the place of the future empress. However, then she remembers how a guy with blonde hair hugged her sister and understands that she would never allow this to happen. While the maid tells the lady that she will first remove the broken plate, she immediately approaches her. After which he presents a piece of broken plate to the maid's neck and says that if she doesn't want to die, then let her do as she says. The main character the next day only wakes up in her bed and then goes out into another room. Then he sees that it is all filled with gifts, and the young lady asks what else it is. At this time, one of the maids immediately runs up to her and wishes the lady good morning, after which she says that His Majesty sent her these gifts. And she heard that the girl was also going to attend the ball, so she just needed to choose what she liked and wear it. The main character then thinks in shock whether the emperor really prepared all this in one day, after which he agrees and tells the girl to convey her gratitude to him. At this time, another maid enters the room and addresses Madame Estelle. She apologizes for the fact that they started the rumor without permission, but claims that they said that these were gifts from His Majesty, so they simply could not refuse. The young lady then says that everything is in order, and then asks the maid if she will help her choose a dress and agrees to something. At this time, the boy looks in shock, first at the gifts, then at his mother. And after that, he turns to his aunt and asks if the emperor likes her. The young lady asks what he is talking about, and the boy then asks a question in response and asks if gifts are not sent to those ladies who like him. The main character then puts her hands on his shoulders and says that no, the emperor sent it because she will attend the ball, but she doesn't have a dress, and the boy asks if he sent it only for this reason. The young lady claims that this is true and asks Togo not to speak so thoughtlessly about whether someone likes someone or not, because such words can bring Veda to others. After which she pats the boy on the head and tells him to be a good boy, and also asks if he wants to play a little with a pancake in the yard, to which he agrees. After which the young man leaves with the dog, and the main character sighs. But when she makes eye contact with another worker, he just turns away and starts walking faster. The young lady then realizes that the situation will get worse if another misunderstanding spreads. But first of all, she doesn't understand why Kaizen continues to behave this way. A few days later, the boy asked his aunt if he could play in the garden today, to which the girl replied that he could, after which she turned to one maid and told her to make sure that the boy did not run away too far, and she agreed. When they leave, the maid claims that Mr. is so active, and although Mr. Sigmund is quite calm, the young lady hears this and gets a little tense. The maid then, seeing her mistress's reaction, apologizes and says that she didn't do it on purpose, but the young lady replies that everything is fine. And then she thinks that someday she will have to tell Hannah the truth, because living together all the time it will be difficult to hide her eye color. The maid then looks a little worried at her mistress, and a little time later they are already finishing trying on the dress. The main character then says that it seems to her that Theo is delayed, and Hannah then says that she will send a maid for him. But suddenly the maid who was with the boy runs into the room and addresses the lady. She apologizes with tears in her eyes, but claims that the young master has disappeared, to which the main character is surprised. She immediately gets up from her seat and asks what she is talking about and how the boy could disappear. And the maid claims that she really only walked away for a second, because someone called her and at that moment the gentleman disappeared, so she begs for forgiveness. Hannah then asks who could have called her in that part of the estate, but the girl then claims that she doesn't know and went up to look, but there was no one there. Hannah then turns to the mistress and says that she will go and look for the boy, but the main character then disagrees and says that they will go together. And he tells the other maid to tell others about this and let them disperse in search of the child. A short time later, everyone is already looking for the boy, and the main character realizes that he has disappeared for the second time. But this case will arouse suspicion in anyone, because it's as if someone deliberately took him. And the young lady thinks, what if someone did understand whose child it was? The main character is not very happy at this thought, but then she hears the maids whispering to each other. Hannah then turns to her mistress, and the main character invites her to go and see what happened there. After this, the young lady approaches them and asks what is happening there, and the maids immediately turn around, after which they bow and apologize for making a fuss, but claim that the ceramics displayed in the pavilion were broken. The main character then wonders if this really happened right now, and if it could be somehow connected with Theo. Then she enters the pavilion and still sees broken dishes, after which she asks if anyone has seen a boy with black hair about 5 years old, and whose name is Theo. The maids then only silently look at the mistress, but then they say that they saw and glance at each other. However, then one of the maids raises her hand and addresses the lady and then claims that she saw, and the main character asks where. And the maid replies that right there she saw how the young gentleman knocked over this ceramics, and it broke. The main character then asks if this is true, and the maid replies that yes, and she saw it with her own eyes. But the boy was afraid that he had broken her and ran away. The main character then asks if he was hurt, and if the maid saw why he knocked over the dishes. The girl then turns away and says that she did not see this. But the main character says that this is the place where the collection of the previous imperial majesty was collected, and the girl put the little child in there, not even bothering to keep an eye on him. The maid is surprised at such words and claims that she was cleaning, so she left the door open for a while, and this happened. She also apologizes, and the main character exchanges glances with Hannah and thinks that this is still suspicious, but since Theo's whereabouts are unknown, she should act more carefully. After this, she offers to continue the conversation when they find the child, because they need to hear both versions, and if someone wants to help in the search, they can start. But suddenly someone else enters the room and addresses Astel. It turns out that this is the Emperor along with Theo. The man immediately asks what kind of meeting this is and why the dishes are broken on the floor. The young lady claims that she and Hannah were looking for Theo, and at that time the maid said that she saw the boy break dishes there. The young man immediately screams, "What are they talking about? And he didn't do anything like that." And the Emperor asks when the woman saw the child. The maid is very worried and asks His Majesty for forgiveness, but claims that she does not remember the exact time. However, when the Emperor looks at her coldly, the maid claims that about an hour ago, and the man asks if this is true, because if so, it is quite strange. After all, the child at that time was with him in a flower garden far from there. The young lady then turns to the boy and asks if this is true. And the young man says that yes, His Majesty saved him. While they are talking about this, the maid begins to shake more and more. And the Emperor turns to Theo and asks if he can tell his aunt what happened in the same way as he told him, to which the boy agrees. A short time ago, he was sitting in the garden and playing with Pancake. The boy turned to the dog and asked where the maid had gone. He also said that his mother advised him not to be alone. However, then a maid approached him and asked the master what he was doing there. The boy then asked who she was, and the girl replied that Mrs. Astle had sent her to him. The woman also said that she had tasty treats and asked if the boy wanted to try them, and the young man, hearing the word tasty, immediately decided to approach her. However, when he did this, he heard the dog growl and turned around and saw Pancake's angry face. The maid then asked why the dog bared its teeth so sharply, and the boy then understood that if he thought like that, it was the first time he had seen this maid. And he remembered his mother's words that for some time there would be many strangers walking nearby, but the boy should never follow them. Therefore, now the young man asks goodbye, but claims that his aunt told him not to leave with people he doesn't know. However, the maid tells the master that everything is fine and she is not a bad person. However, when the girl extends her hand, the dog immediately starts barking and the maid can't think of anything better. Then try to grab the young master. Well, at the same time, the dog attacks the maid. And when the young man has time, he runs away with the dog with tears in his eyes. The boy understands that he must run away, but does not know where he is and where he is. However, when the dog suddenly turns off the road, the boy screams out where it went, after which he goes after Pancake. When the young man thinks how scared he is, and in his thoughts asks his mother to save him. At one point, he runs out onto the road where His Majesty is, and the man, looking at the boy in shock, asks Theo if this is him. The young man then, with tears in his eyes, realizes that it is His Majesty, and when the man asks what he is doing there alone, the boy just runs up to him and hugs him. Then he claims that strangers tried to grab him. The emperor becomes a little wary hearing this, after which he turns to the boy and asks Togo to tell him in more detail. The young man then tells everything, and in the end claims that then Pancake brought him from there, to which the dog only barks. The emperor then pats her on the head and says that the dog is very smart. After that, he also hugs the boy and says that everything is fine now so he doesn't have to worry. But the young man could not stand it. He just cried and hugged the emperor back. This man is a little surprised, but the boy just begins to sob loudly, and the emperor says that everything is fine because there is nothing more to be afraid of, and no one will touch him next to him. A little time later, when the young man had stopped crying, the emperor asked if he had calmed down, to which the boy only hummed as a sign of agreement. The emperor says that he is well done and for defeating the bad guys. Upon arrival in the capital, he is entitled to a reward. The young man asks if he will have a reward, and the emperor says that yes, and they will go to the zoo, where he will show him a live bear, and also buy toys and sweets. And if the boy wants, they can also watch the play in the theater. The young man then asks if there is a theater in the capital, and the emperor replies that of course there is more than one, after which he asks whether the boy likes the theater, to which the young man replies that yes, it's a lot of fun there too. The emperor then smiles, and then he turns to the boy and says that if he wants, he can take him to the Bolshoi Theater in the Empire, after which he offers to go to the boy's aunt, because she definitely searched him, to which the young man agrees. But when they walk, the emperor suddenly freezes in place and then turns to the boy, and he asks Togo not to tell his aunt about what they just discussed, and in his thoughts he adds that if the girl finds out that they agreed on something without her knowledge, she will definitely be angry. The young man then says that it's good and he will definitely keep it a secret. The boy also remembers how his mother said that he should not tell anyone about his eye color. Grandfather also supported this idea and said that their Theo was very smart. Therefore now, looking at the emperor, the boy thinks that adults have so many secrets. However, he still likes His Majesty. Now the man claims that he found this place while going to the outbuildings, and to find the culprit, he called all the servants there. One of the knights claimed that all the maids who did not have an alibi or were nearby were already there. And the emperor then turns to the boy and asks if he can recognize the maid who tried to catch him. The boy then carefully examines all the maids and tries to find the one who wanted to take him away, after which he points to the girl with red hair and says that it was her. The main character asks if Theo is sure, and the boy tells his aunt that this is true, after which the maid is immediately surrounded by knights. She cries out that she knows nothing about this, and the young master was mistaken. One of the knights then turns to His Highness and whispers that their testimony of the young master alone is not enough for punishment, after which the man tells the girl to show him her sleeve because the child said that the dog bit the criminal on the sleeve and there should have been a mark there. The girl then seems to be happy about this, after which she shows her sleeves and says that they are intact, and it turns out that this is true. His Highness tenses up a little and thinks that they are really intact. However, then the main character turns to the maid and asks if she can lift up the back of her skirt, to which she asks, why do this? However, when she does so, the main character claims that the girl has changed her clothes. The young lady claims that the maids who work in the morning quickly get their clothes dirty, but the hem is completely clean, as if the dress had just been put on. The maid then screams that she didn't change her clothes, and it's just her today. However, he doesn't let the main character finish and asks what she's talking about. If that's the case, then the security can calmly go and check her room and find out if there is a dress with a torn sleeve, and also see if all the uniform is in stock, because this way you can be sure of her innocence. A maid uniform is a uniform worn by maids in the palace, as well as a piece of clothing directly owned by the palace. If you check the ledger, you can find out how many clothes were assigned to this maid. However, after these words, the girl with red hair only falls to the floor and says that she is to blame. The emperor then looks at her coldly and tells her to tell her why she wanted to kidnap the child. And the girl then screams that she wanted to hide the fact that she broke the ceramics and not go to jail. The main character then understands what's what. And then they bring another maid to them, who said that this boy broke the dishes. She immediately apologizes and claims that the girl is her friend and asked for help, so she had no choice. However, the emperor then tells them both to be taken to prison, after which the knights do just that, and the girls cry out to His Majesty that they were wrong. The main character at this time turns to Hannah and tells her to take Theo to their wing, to which the maid agrees. And the main character at this time puts her hand on her son's head and says that everything is fine, so let him go because she will come soon. After this, the girl heads to His Highness, and when she approaches him, then he bows and thanks. The emperor then says that there is no need for this and that the girl should not worry about tomorrow. She also goes to rest because the child seems to be very scared, so let her calm him down. The young lady then thanks him for his concern and claims that in that case, she will go. However, when the girl turns around, her face immediately changes and she realizes that without Kaizen, nothing would have ended so easily. And of course, if Theo had been falsely accused of breaking valuable ceramics, something terrible could have happened to him. The young lady remembers how the maid screamed that she wanted to hide the fact that she broke the ceramics and not go to jail, and also understands that these maids seem to have a plan ready in case the attempt failed. There could be two people behind this incident, or it could be a collaboration between them. But the young lady thinks that in any case, this time she won't let it go so easily. A little time later, the boy is already telling his mother about how His Majesty appeared and even showing the date. The young man then says that he likes His Majesty, and the main character is a little surprised by this. But then she kisses her son on the cheek and says that they will rest a little, wash up and go to dinner, and if the boy wants to eat something, then let him say, because today she can eat anything. But suddenly the young lady hears someone knocking on the room and it turns out to be the butler. He turns to Madame Estelle and then claims that His Majesty sent gifts to the young master. The main character then asks if he sent gifts, and the boy just jumps from his seat and asks if these are gifts from His Majesty. Then the boy looks at the mountain of gifts and the teddy bear, which is surprising, after which he takes the jar of cookies in his hands and turns to his aunt, asking if he can eat this before dinner. The main character says that yes, but only one, and first you need to thank His Majesty. The main character then asks to convey gratitude to His Majesty, and the boy bows and also thanks for the gifts. When the young man has already eaten the cookies, the main character turns to him and says that if he doesn't mind, he can give them to his mother. The boy is then a little surprised. A long time later, the maid is already finishing her work and tells Mrs. Astle that everything is ready. The young lady then smiles and thanks Hannah, and the maid claims that the lady seems to have returned 6 years ago and then wishes her a good time. And the main character leaves the room. After this, a short time later, they report that she has arrived. The girl enters the room of a lady with black hair, and she says that she is pleased to meet Mrs. Estella. She also claims to be Florin Croyson. Then she says that she is glad to meet you, after which the selection of ladies sits down at the table. The black-haired girl then states that she was surprised to hear that Lady Estella invited her to tea and asks if something happened, to which the main character answers what happened. Then she claims that yesterday her nephew was almost kidnapped. The lady with black hair then, in shock, asks if the young master is okay, and the main character claims that fortunately the kidnapping failed, but His Majesty was worried about the child. Therefore, he sent a stump of tea and sweets as a consolation. After this, the main character turns to the lady with black hair and asks if she would like to treat herself. The girl with black hair then looks coldly at the lady sitting in front of her and then claims that this is a great honor for her, and she thinks that she will be happy to try them along with the desserts that she prepared herself. And then she turns to the maid and tells her to prepare everything for serving. When the desserts are already on the table, Lady Estella says that her interlocutor must have just recently arrived in the capital, to which she smiles and says that this is true, because she has had poor health since birth, and because of this, she had to be treated on the estate until she came of age. The main character then says that thank God the girl has recovered, and the lady with black hair then turns a little worriedly to their mistress Astel. Then she says that she regrets that this happened, but it seemed to her that her sister had sincerely repented. The main character then understands what she is talking about and then smiles and says that she doesn't hold a grudge and then asks what about Lady Florin. The lady with black hair then asks what she is talking about the main character and says that the girl's sister is now in prison because of her. But the brunette then just folds her hands and with a smile on her face says that it is her own fault that she ended up there. And it seems that her elder sister did not like that His Majesty favors Madame Estelle because she loves him very much. The main character then asks if the girl is worried about her, and the brunette then wonders if Lady Estella is asking about this because she is thinking about becoming empress again. The main character claims that there is nothing like that, and she has no desire or opportunity, after which the lady with black hair says that in this case there can be no enmity between them, and on the contrary, everything suits her. All the attention of His Majesty was attracted not by some other girl, but by her. The main character then asks if the girl is saying that she is convenient for her because she is not a competitor. The young lady also realizes that as a child, she had a doll that looked exactly like this girl. And now she says that if this were really so, she would not have come to the capital to check the situation. The lady with blue eyes then coldly looks at the main character, and she realizes that this is the true face of this girl. Astel understands that she does not want to be an empress and cannot be. But this world is unpredictable. And now the lady with black hair says, who could have thought 6 years ago that she would be here? It makes sense to check the personal relationship between Lady Estella and His Majesty. But her desire to apologize is completely sincere because she has long admired her mistress. The main character then says that the lady is overdoing it, but the girl says that it is true, and she must not remember, but they have already met. And the main character claims that in any case, as a girl and herself saw His Majesty, he does not have any affection for her, so she need not worry. And the lady with black hair then only asks why the girl is so confident. And the main character claims that because this is not love, but just a feeling of guilt. Kaizen is not familiar with the concept of love. The lady with black hair then smiles and says that she will believe her interlocutor, and the young lady then gets up from the table and says that she will take her leave. She also thanks Lady Florin for a pleasant time. The lady with blue eyes says that she would like to sit together sometime over a cup of tea. When the main character leaves this room, Toast leans against the wall and sighs. The girl understands that it was more difficult with Lady Florin than she thought, but it became obvious that the kidnapping incident had nothing to do with her. After all, the girl is clearly not capable of creating such a weak trap, and then there can only be one person for the criminals. Therefore, now knowing the identity of the criminal, the main character must repay him, and first of all decides to hold the ball safely. At this time, her aunt approaches the lady with black hair and covers the girl with a blanket. And she thanks her aunt, and then they ask if she found out everything she asked. The woman then claims that she found out everything she could about the empress, but did not find anything special, and only one thing confuses her a little. This was said by a maid who works at the castle of Marin, and the woman heard this while being near the room of the former empress and Theo. Then the boy called the young lady mother, but there was a maid standing outside the door who heard it, and she said that the child called Mrs. Astel Mom. The lady with black hair then asks what's strange about it, because she, too, called her aunt Mom when she was a child, and the woman says that this is also true. Then the lady with black hair is about to leave when she looks at the table. Then she understands that the main character removed lint from the food, and after that she says that there is nothing wrong with being careful. And then he turns to his aunt and tells her to find out everything about the birth and origin of the child. The boy is sitting with the maid and the dog at this time. A little time later, the main character is already at the ball and feels the gaze of everyone present who are discussing her. Some of them whisper and say that this is the previous empress. The main character thinks that they are itching to talk about it. But this is understandable, because before them appeared the same empress who had divorced and gone missing for 6 years. Suddenly someone approaches the young lady and greets her. It turns out to be a girl with black hair, and she tells the lady that it is a great honor to meet her again. The main character tells Lady Florin that she is also happy, and the girl then says that Lady Estella is very beautiful today. And it seems that thanks to her, some people just can't take their eyes off them. People who hear this immediately turn around and pretend that they weren't watching. And the lady with black hair then says that she takes her leave and then leaves, and the young lady wonders if the brunette really helped her in this way. After which she walks further through the ballroom and wonders where Kaizen is. The girl looks around, but sees only unfamiliar faces and wonders if the man could not be present. However, suddenly, while she is walking, she crashes into someone. This guy asks goodbye and asks if it is Mrs. Estelle. He also apologizes for scaring her. A young man with silver hair claims that his name is Cerbal von Eklund, and he is the commander of the Ranberg Knights. The main character, looking at him, understands that he is indeed the commander of the Knights, and thinks that the Knights of Ranberg, if her memory serves her, are as important as the Imperial Guard. But then she turns to the guy and asks what the commander of the Ranberg Knights is doing there, and the guy says that before he went north, he came there to meet with His Majesty and report. After which the main character is a little surprised and asks if something really happened in the north again. The guy then laughs lightly and says that no, there was just an uprising in that area recently, so they are patrolling it. The young lady then says, "I understand," but then she wonders why the knight even spoke to her. And the guy then turns to the young lady and says that his father asked him to say hello to the Marquis Kahlenberg. The young lady realizes that his father, Gerald von Enlin, is a minister of state, and the girl wonders if they don't know each other. Well, then she replies that it's clear and she will definitely convey this greeting. However, then someone else approaches them and greets them. The guy says that as he sees it, Mrs. Estella and Cerbal have already met, after which the knight approaches his friend and says that he hopes he didn't have time to bring trouble to Lady Estelle, and the young man with silver hair just laughs and says that he didn't do anything like that. The main character then turns to Knight Linden and asks if he has seen His Majesty. The guy then thinks a little and then says that His Majesty is now upstairs. And when the main character looks at one of the railings, she sees that this is so. But suddenly music starts playing in the hall, or the knight claims that he should return to his partner. While everyone is dancing, the main character looks at His Majesty. But when she lowers her gaze, someone turns to her. It turns out that this is the same guy with silver hair, and he claims that if the girl does not have a partner, would she have the honor of giving him her first dance? The young lady then thinks why this man is asking her to dance, and the guy then awkwardly asks if she might be uncomfortable. The main character then realizes that the guy is starting to screw himself up. That's why she says that everything is completely different, and that she simply didn't even think about dancing today. But then the girl notices that the guy looks a little puzzled and does not understand what happened. And when he turns around, he sees His Highness and asks if His Majesty has come there. The man just looks at the two a little coldly and then bows and turns to Lady Estelle. And then he asks if she will dance the first dance with him. The young man with silver hair is then surprised by this, and the lady with black hair turns pale from this. Everyone in the hall immediately begins to whisper, and the main character turns to His Highness and says that it's a pity for gays. However, she is not going to dance today. The girl claims that she has not participated in any competitions for so long that she will certainly disrespect him during the dance. The emperor then says that it doesn't matter, and the young lady just bites her lip and then asks to forgive her. The young lady thinks how much she doesn't like this situation. However, when she looks at His Highness's face, which is like a puppy asking if he can sincerely ask the dance, then the main character still sighs and agrees. The nobles, seeing His Highness with such a face, are very surprised because they never thought that he could look like that. And the girl then begins her dance with the emperor. She realizes that she once devoted her days to dance practice in order to move elegantly and beautifully. Step by step, she rehearsed each move until she kicked her feet to perfection. Only for the sake of this man, and now making a beautiful turn, she surprises His Highness. And he says that the girl dances beautifully, and the main character then understands that this is her first time dancing with Kazan. And he didn't like the points, so he often didn't attend them while the girl went out of her way. Just to hear these words, then the dance ends and the main character leans on His Highness. The man then asks Astel in a whisper if something happened, and the main character even shook a little and understands that there is no doubt and she needs to do it now when all the attention is focused on them. After which she immediately falls to her knees and asks His Majesty to have mercy on her. The girl's voice trembles uncomfortably. However, she raises her head and realizes that this is even better because her speech will look much more natural. Then she continues talking and claims that her grandfather is the Marquis of Kalenberg. He traveled a long way because of her and his health deteriorated. But even though, thanks to the care of His Highness, he became better and his condition stabilized, the young lady is pained by the realization that everything happened through her fault. Everyone in the hall immediately begins to whisper and ask if Marquez is sick. Another girl says that he is already at an advanced age. The main character begins to cry and begs His Highness to allow her to quickly send her grandfather and little nephew home. After this, the girl lets go of her head and thinks that this is great and should work. People in the hall begin to whisper, and one of them claims that she thought this would be some kind of special request. And the lady is incredible, so of course the Emperor will allow it. However, His Highness only looks at her a little puzzled, and when the girl raises her head, wondering why he doesn't say anything, then he sees his puzzled face, and the Emperor only offers to talk about it later. The main character then cries out to the Regional Highness and says that, like her grandfather, Theo recently suffered from a fever. And His Highness says that this is true, and both of them are not in the best health right now. So there is no point in sending them on such a long journey right now. So they will talk about it after the end of the score. The main character is still trying to convince His Highness. But he only with a sad face tells her to stop and claims that this is an order. The main character is very surprised by this because after their reunion, he never once used the word order in relation to her. And now the Emperor turns to the secretary and tells them to continue the ball, after which he leaves, leaving the young lady alone. The girls immediately approach the main character and tell the lady not to be so upset. One of them says that this is true and the Marquis will soon recover. The main character then thanks them for their concern, well, a little time later, when she is already leaving on the street. Then she sighs and understands that she was sure that the man would agree, and she wasn't the only one who thought so. After all, those present also had no doubts, but the girl then does not understand why he refused. And why was his expression so sad? Now, when the main character turns around, she leads a beautiful tree behind her, after which the girl goes to him and realizes that it is an acacia. However, when she gets closer, someone comes out from behind a tree and addresses Estella. It turns out to be His Highness, and he offers to talk. Then he claims that that's why the girl came, and the main character doesn't understand what he's talking about, and asks what he is talking about. However, the Emperor only claims that she came just to say this and specifically entered the ball to get his permission. But the main character asks if that's why he refused her and dialed it. She asks why she so wants to send her grandfather and child back. But the main character then turns to His Highness and asks why he so wants to take them to the capital, to which he wants to say something but still stops, and then says that it would be better if she said right away and openly that gays don't like points and let him send these two home. Well, the young lady then asks if he would listen to her, and the Emperor then claims that if she did so, at least he would not feel trampled upon. The main character then almost cries and asks if he rejected her request only for this reason, and only because she allegedly trampled on his feelings. But the man then screams that no, and that's not the point, after which he approaches the young lady. But when he says that simply if these two are not there, then she will. But then he stops without finishing the sentence, and realizes that the girl will leave him again because she will not stay in the capital and will immediately return home. It seemed to him that if this happened, he would never see her again, so now he claims that he wanted her to stay next to him, from which the main character is surprised and thinks what she just heard. She asks His Highness if he wants her to stay by his side, but then with tears in his eyes, he says that he doesn't want to go back there again, and especially to be close to His Majesty. The girl understands that 6 years ago, having heard about his plans to divorce her, she wanted to plunge into eternal sleep, but she did not. because otherwise the emperor would have become in people's voices a cold-blooded man who plunged his wife into eternal sleep on the first day of the honeymoon, and she left, and then suffered all the humiliation alone. Because even though it's stupid, she really loved him, but that doesn't mean she didn't suffer. So now the young lady lifts up the hem of her dress and tells His Majesty that there are things in this world that cannot be corrected. She then turns around and states that if he has nothing more to say, then she leaves at that. Her young lady leaves His Highness alone with his thoughts. He understands that it is different from the one that was at the ball, and he knows what Estella looks like when she suffers. And now, nothing comes to his mind, except for that facial expression. At this time, at the estate of the Duke of Leston, he asks one of the servants if he is talking about the emperor, and then the Duke is informed that they say the emperor is now at the Dench residence. The man thought that if information about the preparation of the rebellion leaked out, then His Highness would sit in that remote castle, not daring to act. And now the Duke claims that the emperor is acting faster than he expected, and he already knew that the Duke of Siet was a spy, and he was also recruited only to convey false information to the emperor. After all, he might have thought that he had confused their plans to leave the capital, but the palace was like a fortress for him. This means that the emperor's departure from the palace is only in their favor, so they will see who really comes out victorious. Now the Duke says that if the opportunity arises while staying at the Dench residence, he should suddenly attack the emperor. And the servant then says, a little puzzled, that the Duke and Duchess are also there with the emperor. The young lady's father then asks if the servant is talking about Estella, because if so, there is no need to pay attention to this lousy girl. The Duke understands that for the sake of his dream of becoming a regent, he took a girl of impeccable blood as his wife. But her daughter grew up so ungrateful and stubborn, and it was worth sending her young as a mistress to the previous emperor or selling her to another decent aristocrat immediately after the divorce. Now the man just grits his teeth and then turns to the favor and claims that his daughter has already broken off relations with him, and if anything happens, you can plunge her into eternal sleep along with the emperor because he doesn't care. The next day, when the young lady's grandfather comes into the room, she asks how everything went. But her grandfather just waves his head, and the head heroine asks if it worked out today, like in previous days. For the past few days, Kaizen had been ignoring his grandfather's request for an audience, and the young lady understands that he probably doesn't want to hear a request to send them home, and at this time her grandfather tells Estella to eat at least something. But the girl apologizes and says that she has no appetite, and the boy then asks his mother when they will go to the capital. The main character is surprised by this and asks what he is talking about. The young man asks in response, "Shouldn't they now go to the capital?" The main character, looking at the glowing eyes of the boy, thinks what has been happening to him for several days, and is it really Kaizen told him something? However, the main character then tells Theo that he will not go to the capital and he will need to return home with his grandfather. The boy then shakes, almost crying, and asks why. And the main character says that the capital is very far away and there is nothing good there for a small child. However, the boy remembers how the emperor said that when they arrive in the capital, he will show him a live bear and take him to the Bolshoi theater, so now the boy with tears in his eyes says that he also wants to go to the capital. Then, the main character and her grandfather look at each other, and the young lady decides to change the subject, and then asks the boy if he wants to go on a picnic with his mother and grandfather today. The boy then asks if they will play in the forest, and the main character says yes, after which she asks if grandfather is against it, and he just nods his head. The young lady then claims that she will now prepare the snacks and let the boy and his grandfather prepare for now, to which the young man agrees and then goes to his grandfather, and the main character gets up from the table and thinks that the forest next to this area is used as the emperor's hunting grounds. But if she warns in advance about their walk, then there shouldn't be any problems. And people rarely go there, which means you can stock up on medicinal herbs, after which the main character turns to one of the servants and asks Togo to tell His Majesty that she asks permission to take a walk with the child in the nearest forest, to which the servant agrees, and the main character thinks whether the emperor will even refuse this. At this time, his secretary, tired from work, is in the emperor's office, and when the servant reports the young lady's request, he only asks where she is going. The servant then repeats once again that Mrs. Astel would like permission to take a walk in the northern forest. And then the secretary says that His Majesty cannot hunt there now. A man with dark red hair wonders if she is going to go on a picnic. But it is thanks to this girl that he is suffering so much there now. After all, after the ball, His Majesty worked without a break, and because of this, it was so hard for him, and today the Emperor was again in a depressed state, so the secretary consoled him and eventually sent him to the street. Well, now he understands that he is not going to push these two together, and if this continues, then His Majesty's feelings will only intensify, because there is nothing stronger than the desire to get what does not belong to one. However, then the highway youth with dark red hair thinks that he could better give them a chance to talk, and then tells the servant to tell the young lady that he gives permission for a picnic, but let him not say that His Highness is there. When the servant comes to the young lady with the news that she has been allowed to go into the forest, she and her son rejoice. After that, they are all together on the street, and the main character says what a good day it is today. The boy then notices one of the frogs and runs after it. Grandfather, seeing the boy running away, tells him not to run too far, to which the boy agrees. After which the man sits down next to the young lady and says that the boy's stamina is growing day by day. And the main character tells her grandfather not to overdo it. And the man then asks if anything else happened on the O-Bowl and maybe she saw someone she knew. The girl then says that no, and the political circle has changed a lot. The young lady understands that although there was one event, she met the commander of the Ranberg Knights. After which the main character says that his name seemed to be Sirbel von Eklund, and her grandfather, when he hears this, noticeably tenses up. The young lady claims that she remembers him asking to convey greetings from his father, and the grandfather then asks in a shaking voice if his granddaughter means Gerald Eklund. The young lady then replies that, yes, and now he serves as a minister, to which the young lady's grandfather is even more surprised and asks if Harold has become a minister. However, then he realizes that he is overreacting and tries to correct the situation, after which he says that it is understandable and claims that they once communicated, but not for too long, and that this guy was his lieutenant. The main character understands that her grandfather is clearly not telling her something, and then turns to him. But at the same moment Theo turns to him and calls his grandfather, after which he gets up and says that he will go. But then he still turns a little awkwardly to his granddaughter and says that she wanted to accumulate herbs, after which he claims that he will look after Theo and she can look for it, and the main character agrees. A short time later it begins to rain, and the Emperor is in a tent. The knight informs His Majesty that it looks like the rain will be heavy, and the Emperor then looks at the guy and says that nothing can be done, so they return. However, then, the Emperor notices something moving in the bushes and realizes that, judging by the sound, it is definitely not an animal, after which he reaches for his bow. And a second later he already pulls the bowstring, but when the knight turns to His Majesty as if asking what he is doing here, then he only shows that the knight should be quieter, after which he aims at the bushes. However, when he is about to let him go, he sees that Estella was in the bushes and is a little surprised. After which he immediately runs out with his cape and asks what the girl is doing there. He immediately shelters the young lady, and she asks what His Highness is doing there, but he claims that he has been hunting there all day today. The young lady then asks who gave them permission to have a picnic, and His Highness asks what kind of picnic she is talking about. And at the same moment, the two realize that it was the secretary. However, the main character understands that now is not the time to think about it. Then she turns to the Emperor and says that she needs to find Theo and grandfather, and she went into the forest for a short time and then got lost. But the two of them don't even have anywhere to hide from the rain. The Emperor, hearing this, immediately shouts to his knights to find them now, but they then tell His Majesty that they cannot leave him with their mistress. However, His Highness then tells them to do so right away, after which the knights mount their horses and head off. The main character then screams for them to wait because she will go with them. However, His Highness says that she will not go because this forest is much more confusing than it looks at first glance, and she will get lost again. However, when the main character wants to object, then His Highness tells her to listen to him, and the young lady begins to get angry. She turns to the Emperor and says that he himself never listens to what she says. However, the girl at the same moment closes her mouth and realizes that it came out on its own. His Highness then only remains silent, after which he apologizes and tells Estella that he was wrong. The guy also claims that at the ball, he behaved like an egoist and wanted to immediately apologize, but did not have the courage to look her in the eyes. The main character then looks at the Emperor's face full of pain, but then claims that he has nothing to apologize for. After all, His Majesty the Emperor is the ruler of this empire, and everything must go according to his will. The man then says that he didn't apologize in order to hear this in response, and asks the main character what he wanted to hear then. After all, how can she trust him when in the morning he refused an audience, and now he suddenly apologizes? However, His Highness then wants to scream something, but suddenly stops because he understands that this will not get better. After which he says that this is true, and he was just being uselessly stubborn. The guy then apologizes to Astel and says that if it's not too late, he's ready to let them go home. The main character then asks if he is lying, and His Highness just nods his head and the main character thanks him. After which she realizes with a smile on her face that she can send Theo home. However, suddenly His Highness notices someone moving in the bushes, after which he immediately grabs the young lady and addresses her. After which, when they are closer to each other, he whispers for the girl to bend down, and the young lady does so. After which, a sword immediately flies over her head, and a little time later they are already surrounded by assassins. The main character understands that this is an attempt on the life of the Emperor, and His Highness just extends his hand and tells the young lady to stand behind him. The mercenaries then move closer and closer, and one of them orders to finish off His Highness. While the Emperor is trying to fight them off, the main character only stands behind excitedly. And when the Emperor has already finished off almost the last mercenary, he breathes heavily because he had to cope with so many people. Well, when he turns to the young lady and asks if she's okay, Theo sees that another mercenary is heading towards her from behind, and when the girl turns around, it is already too late. She immediately falls to her knees, but when she looks up, she sees that His Highness has protected her. However, now he too has been wounded, and when His Highness tries to take the assassin's sword away, he only drives the sword deeper into the wound. The young lady realizes that she needs to do something, and then she sees a dagger behind her and reaches for it. At that very second, she approaches the mercenary and wounds him, but His Majesty already falls off his feet. He tries to hold his frame so as not to lose consciousness from loss of blood. The young lady immediately asks if he is okay, and the man just clenches his teeth in pain. The young lady then says that his injury is serious, but the Emperor just puts his hand in front of her face and says that everything is fine, so let her not pay attention. The main character then only worries more and wonders why this happened. She turns away and looks at the mercenaries and then realizes that obviously most of the forces capable of starting an uprising have been destroyed. However, when she looks at one of those lying on the ground, then she understands that she knows this man and he has been close to her father since childhood. Well, suddenly His Highness grabs the main character and then says that we need to find Theo and the Marquis, because perhaps the mercenaries went in their direction. The main character then almost shakes in shock. She understands that now her closest people may be in danger, however. His Highness tries to calm the girl down and says that they need to go. He excitedly turns to the girl and says that the longer they stay there, the more danger they will be exposed to. But the young lady, looking at His Highness's wound, understands that it's not easy for him himself. However, a little time later they are already racing on a horse, and the young lady wonders why the Emperor is doing this, and whether he is trying to make amends for his guilt in this way. She remembers how the man said that he wanted her to stay next to him, and now she is clinging to him while racing on a horse. A short time later, one of the knights who met His Highness already addresses them. The man claims that an attempt was made on them, and perhaps one of the mercenaries is still alive, so they need to quickly find the child and the Marquis. The knight claims that they found them, and these two are under guard, after which he says that he will take His Highness to them. And a little later, they are already approaching the grandfather and the boy. The main character immediately jumps off her horse and heads towards these two, after which she hugs the boy and asks if he is okay, and also turns to his grandfather and asks how he is. The young man just cries and says that bad people came, and the knight tells His Highness that mercenaries also came there, but thank God they made it on time. The Emperor only breathes heavily and then approaches the boy, and she gets down on one knee next to him and then asks if he's okay. The young man then, with tears in his eyes, says that yes, but he is very worried about the video of His Majesty's wound. The Emperor puts his hand on the boy's cheek and says that he will survive, so let the young man not worry, however. Then he sees red liquid from his glove left on the child's cheek. But His Highness does not have time to do anything as everything begins to float in his eyes and he loses strength. The main character, seeing this, asks His Majesty if everything is okay, and he says that it's nothing serious and let them give him a second. But then he gets worse and worse, and the next minute he collapses on the floor. The knights immediately run up to His Majesty, and a little time later they are already in the estate and cry out to quickly call the doctor. The secretary immediately goes to His Majesty and asks what the hell is going on there. The boy, seeing how His Majesty wears him, is very worried and then screams that he will also go with him, but the main character says that he is not allowed, after which she gives the boy to his grandfather and tells him to take him to the bedroom to believe that the boy was very scared. So let the grandfather give him a sedative, after which the man does just that, and the main character just watches as the grandfather carries away the young man, after which she immediately bends over and thinks how tired she is. That same evening, Theo sleeps with his dog while the main character sits at the table. Then her grandfather comes up to her and asks if she's okay because the young lady has turned completely pale. The young lady then says that she is not okay at all, and that Kazan suffered so much because of her. However, the grandfather says that it is not her fault, and the main character just shakes her head and claims that she finally had a chance to send the two of them home, but in the end it didn't work out, because all the people in one way or another connected with today's events will have to participate in the investigation in the capital. But they tried so hard to get a chance leave. The man then tries to calm his granddaughter down and says that there will probably be another way, so don't let her worry so much. Well, this is much more important. That her father may be involved in what happened, and the main game does not say that this is most likely the case. And she's even sure of this because she recognized one person among the mercenaries. And the grandfather then turns to the young lady and asks in a whisper if the mercenaries sent by her father were trying to plunge even them into eternal sleep. And the young lady then answers that this is because her father hardly cares about her life. She thinks what will happen if everyone finds out who is behind this, because then most likely she will not avoid execution. But now she is not afraid of death. And then she takes her grandfather's hand and claims that she is glad that Theo is listed as Kallenberg's child. The girl assumed that such a day might come one day, and after her mother was taken into her crippled sleep, the Kallenberg and Leston families openly broke off relations. Therefore, even if someone from Leston turns out to be traitors, then nothing threatens the lives of Theo and grandfather. So now the young lady says that if something happens, let Grandpa take care of Theo. However, the man then asks her not to say that, because everything will be fine. He claims that this is not the first time the young lady's father has acted strangely, but since he is still alive and well, it means he did not leave evidence pointing to his involvement. And this time everything will be the same, because her father must completely figure it out. But the main character then only hugs the girl and asks if this will really happen. The man says that, of course, he is a very smart person. The main character at this time thinks that Kaizen is on the verge of falling into eternal sleep due to an attempt to save her. And she, even knowing the instigator, simply hides information about the crime. So the girl thinks whether it would be better to tell about her father's actions and beg for forgiveness, after which she also thinks about what to do. But suddenly they hear someone knocking on the door, and the young lady's grandfather then gets up and asks what happened. The maid then looks through the door and addresses the Marquis as well as Madame Estelle. Well, when she just wants to say that His Majesty has arrived, the Emperor is already at the door. The main character asks why His Majesty came, and he just comes up to Estelle and asks if she was hurt and if Theo is okay. The main character then says, His Majesty will calm down because everything is over and he now needs to rest. The man is then in a stupor, and after a little silence he says that it's understandable and thank God she's okay. However, at this time, the secretary also runs into the room and shouts to His Majesty that it is too early to get up. However, the Emperor hits him in the face right there. The secretary is surprised at this, and the Emperor continues to beat him, after which he tells the secretary to make an official apology. After all, he knew that it was easy to get lost in that forest and that he was hunting there, and today his hasty decision, made without his approval, almost cost several lives. Therefore, let him not make such mistakes again. The main character understands that because Belian gave permission for the picnic, they ended up there. The Emperor now apologizes for the mess and says that he made sure that the girl was safe, so he takes his leave. The young lady tells His Majesty that he needs rest, and then the man just leaves. The main character then turns to the secretary and asks if he needs help, but he just raises his hand and says that everything is fine, and he doesn't need help, after which he gets up and bows, and then he claims that a little later he will come up to apologize in a proper way. A short time later, His Highness is already waiting for the secretary on the street, and then he approaches. But he claims that the identities of all the mercenaries have been established, but the emperor then tells the secretary to hush up this matter, and no one should know anything about this. The guy then doesn't ask unnecessary questions, although he really wants to, and tells His Majesty that he listens and obeys. The main character understands that when Kaizen felt better, they all went to the capital as witnesses to conduct an investigation. The journey took 10 days, which they traveled without stopping and under the strictest security, and finally they arrived in the capital. Now they get out of the carriage, and after that they are greeted by one of the servants. He claims that during their stay in the capital, guests will live in this mansion, and when the main character enters it, she is surprised. She says that this is a little overkill, and grandfather agrees with her. At this time, the boy notices something, and after that begins to run there. The young lady then turns to Theo and asks where he is going. But one of the servants of the video boy asks if he is Mr. Theo, because if so, His Majesty the Emperor has prepared a gift. The boy then, with a smile on his face, asks if this is a gift from His Majesty. He also pets his dog and is very happy about the gift. The main character understands that since that day she has never seen Kaizen, and now the word is calmer. The boy is now playing with his new home, the dog is sleeping on the bed, the grandfather is a young lady practicing with a sword, and the main character, watching her grandfather through the window, smiles. Again, suddenly someone turns to her and informs her that a guest is waiting for the lady on the first floor. The main character, when she goes down the stairs, thinks who might be looking for a meeting with her in the capital. However, when she comes closer and sees a familiar outfit, her face changes. After which she realizes that it is her brother Fritz, the guy Icy excitedly addresses his sister. Well, the main character then remembers how he asked why she gave the go-ahead for the divorce without her father's permission, and insisted that she should not do anything and beg for forgiveness from her father. So now she bites her lip and tells him to leave because she doesn't want to see him. The guy then, almost crying, asks to forgive him and claims that he was wrong, after which, with a shaking hand, he asks if they could do it all over again, and if she gives him another chance. However, the main character then says that they haven't said a word in the last 6 years, so why did he suddenly need this chance? However, when the guy is already trying to call out to his sister, then at this time a boy with a dog runs into the room and asks Aunt Estelle what happened there. The main character then remembers how she was little and understands that this is bad. And did her brother really guess? A young man with blonde hair is now asking Estella if this is the boy. However, the main character only understands that the heir to the family and her older brother Fritz was a wonderful man who was unattainable for her. But the young lady liked her brother because he was nice to her. Therefore, she could only trust him and only rely on him, being under the yoke of her heartless father. Back then, the person she loved as much as Kaizen was her older brother. Now the main character interrupts her brother's words and says that this is Theo, Sigmund's son, and asks if his brother hasn't heard of him. The young man with blonde hair is then a little surprised and then lowers his hand and says that I understand. After which he leans over to the boy and says that he is pleased to meet you, and the boy's father was his cousin. The main character then sighs and turns to Theo and then tells him to call this man Uncle Fritz. The young lady also claims that this man is her older brother. And the boy is then a little surprised, after which he greets Uncle Fritz with a smile on his face. The young lady's brother then says that Theo is so polite and he is a very sweet child. But when he extends his hand to the boy, the main character comes between them, and he says that they are done with the acquaintance, so let the guy now say why he came there. The young lady's brother then stands up and claims that the reason he came there concerns the things left behind by the Empress Dowager. A little time later, the main character already understands what's going on, and to put it briefly, the Dowager Empress left her some things, but her father intercepted them and is not going to give them back. The guy now claims that it doesn't seem like his father needs these things, but most likely, with the help of them, he wants to lure her to the lady and try to win her over to his side. Well, the main character then insists that her brother go and tell his father that if he gives these things to his wife now, she will file a complaint with His Majesty the Emperor. And the guy then says in shock that his sister may not receive these things, and there is no evidence at all that the Empress left them to her. But the main character says that she doesn't care, and it's better to give these things to His Majesty the Emperor. Who is the grandson of the Empress Dowager than to leave them with their father and brother? The young lady then says that this is also true, after which he gets up from his seat and says that he will then say hello to his grandfather and go. But he asks how long the girl plans to stay with the police, and the young lady says that in 2 days they plan to leave. The guy then asks if his sister can stay for a few more days, because the day of her mother's ball is coming soon. The main character then realizes that around this time her mother held an annual charity ball at the mansion. And after she fell into eternal sleep, it was not held for several years, but after the young lady's debut in secular society, she took on the functions of the organizer. And now the young lady asks if her brother continued to hold the ball while she was away, and the guy answers here, and he did it himself. The girl understands that, according to the rules of the empire, men never organized a rampart, and yet she does not understand why he continued this tradition and whether his brother really regrets the past. The main character then apologizes and says that in 2 days she must leave and therefore will not be able to attend, to which her brother just sighs, but then a little awkwardly says that it's good and then nothing can be done, but says that if she needs help, then let the girl contact him at any time. The main character then replies that it's good, and she will contact you if you need anything, after which the guy leaves. And finally, she turns around with a warm smile and thanks her sister, after which the main character still closes the door. At this time, the aristocrats are sitting at the table, and then they are informed that His Majesty the Emperor is entering. When Kaizen enters the room and sits down, a man with yellow hair immediately approaches him. He immediately kneels down and addresses His Majesty, after which he sincerely asks for forgiveness for the inconvenience his daughter caused him. This turns out to be the Marquis Croissant. He claims that the girl has been a troublemaker in their family since childhood, and the Emperor then remembers how the girl tried in every way to get close to him, and then also insulted Estella. The Emperor just looks at the man coldly, and he understands that as soon as the girl was away from him, it was as if she had lost her way. And now it is obvious that this is a huge problem. But in any case, she is just a replacement, and it's even a little funny. Now the Emperor says that this explains everything, after which he claims that according to the laws of the imperial palace, Lady Marian dared to unfairly accuse the Emperor's guest. Will be sent to a monastery on the island. The Marquis is a little surprised at such words, and then immediately bows his head even lower and thanks His Majesty the Emperor for his mercy. His Highness then realizes that he was lucky, and the maid who was ordered to kidnap the child fell into eternal sleep without revealing the identity of the customer. And in the end, due to the lack of evidence, it was impossible to give the appropriate punishment. Even if it was done to conceal the crime, they succeeded. However, the problem is that Lady Marian is the daughter of Croissant, and the Marquis is an important person among the budding aristocrats, and it is natural that if you remove this important part, then everything else can simply fall apart, and they are just a disorderly herd. Now the secretary turns to His Majesty and says that he needs to go to the Great Hall to voice his last will, to which the Emperor agrees. He understands that he was in a hurry when he received the will, and he said that the southern territories must be unconditionally returned because the aristocrats cannot be allowed to get them. Now those close to the Emperor are asking, isn't it strange? Because 2 months have already passed since the day the Dowager Empress put me into eternal sleep. But until that moment, no one spoke about the right to the property of the South. The knight then asked for forgiveness, but claimed that they still had not found the Duchess, and a little time later someone was already screaming that he had brought the Duchess. The man understands that if the empire were in a more stable position, and if the lands received by the girl would not be in such a deplorable state, then maybe she wouldn't have to go through all these events because she could have lived happily if she hadn't been connected to him. The main character at this time goes to the grave of the Dowager Empress. She puts flowers and prays. Then in her thoughts she realizes that she brought her favorite white acacias. She also apologizes for coming to see her so late. Well, suddenly someone approaches the young lady. It turns out to be the high priest, and the main character immediately approaches her and claims that she is glad to see her. The woman then almost cries and says how many difficulties the young lady had to overcome during this time. The girl in response to this only smiles bitterly, and the high priestess says that Her Majesty the Dowager Empress was so worried about her, and before she fell into sleep, she asked to convey her words. The woman claimed that the southern lands were originally hers, but she had never ruled them on her own in her life, and at the end of her life, she wants to use them for the sake of Estella. The main character then says that these were her last words, and the woman replies that, yes, because Her Majesty also got married to the imperial family at an early age. After which she turns to Mrs. Estelle and says that she is an intelligent person, and she is sure that the girl will wisely use the received lands. The woman also offers to come in because the power of attorney for the inheritance is being formalized there, and the main character agrees and then comes in. All the people start looking at her, but the young lady just walks to her place and looks at His Majesty. The man claims that from this moment, they begin to draw up powers of attorney under the will left by the Dowager Empress, after which the Duchess is given a paper and told to sign it. The girl picks up a pen and realizes that it took her so long to get there, and, in fact, all she needs to do to transfer the inheritance is to sign a document stating that all rights to the lands will be transferred to Emperor Kazan. After the girl does this, the servant takes this paper to another man, and he asks if the Duchess will really give it back. All rights to the land are given to His Majesty without any conditions, and the young lady wants to say that she will give it away. However, she falls silent mid-sentence. She remembers how the woman told her that the girl is an intelligent person, and she believes that she will wisely use the received lands, after which the main character asks His Majesty to read it, but asks if she can now add conditions. Everyone in the hall is surprised by this, even the high priest. The girl understands that 6 years ago she left Kazan's army without any conditions. Well, she thinks what has changed since then. But the huge territory in the south left by the Dowager Empress is very valuable, and if the girl had these lands then, she could have received a lot and changed a lot. But now she has this power. However, the main character remembers her loved ones, after which he looks at His Highness, and he says that the girl should continue. The young lady then claims that she heard the Wasington mansion where I was born, and raised the Dowager Empress without an owner almost turned into ruins, and the Emperor claims that everything is true. And the main character then turns to His Majesty and says that if he allows it, she would like to build an educational institution there. A man in court asks if she wants to build an educational institution, and the main character replies that, in honor of the late and Dowager Empress, she would like to found a charity school for the poor and needy. The young lady then asks the Empress to forgive her, but now it is more important for her to protect something more valuable than power, so she uses this chance for her and not for herself. Everyone in the hall then begins to whisper, and the Emperor then remains silent for a while and then says that so be it. Then he turns to the assistant judge and tells him to provide him with documents, and after that, one of the servants brings them. After which, the Emperor signs and seals the document, and then claims that the process of delegating the inheritance is complete. A short time later, the main character is already in the garden and feeding the pigeons. However, then the Emperor approaches her and addresses the girl. He asks if the young lady will now return to the east, and she replies that yes, and if His Highness allows, she would like to go tomorrow morning. The man then, with a face that shows all his pain, says that he cannot ask the young lady to stay there. But the main character, while flatly says that there is no place for her there, and His Highness then agrees and then apologizes. But after a moment of silence, the main character asks what he is apologizing for, and the man says that for everything. For the fact that she had to come there because of him, and for the fact that he did not even take her opinion into account, and even for that day, 6 years ago. But you can't count all the things for which he has to apologize to her, and it seems that he has always done only bad things towards her. The man also says that Estella may not forgive him, but let him go where he is not. The girl will be happy. The main character, looking at His Highness, understands that now he looks and speaks like the kind boy whom she loved. And if during those 10 years their communication had been at least a little sincerity, the young lady might have thought differently. However, now she can actually move forward. After which the main character thanks His Majesty, and a little time later, someone turns to Duchess Estelle. After which they claim that it is a great honor for him to meet her. The main character understands that this is one of those present in the temple, but then she apologizes and asks if he could introduce himself. The man then says that he completely forgot, and then says with a smile on his face that he is the Count of Eclin and also the Minister of Military Affairs. The main character then remembers how a young man with silver hair claimed that his father asked to say hello to the Marquis Kallenberg, and how her father reacted to this. After which the girl realizes that this is her grandfather's former colleague. At this time, the young lady's grandfather asks why this man came there, of Leston is now standing in front of him with a smug grin. The main character only says that she is pleased to meet the Count and has heard a lot about him and her grandfather. The man then just smiles and asks how the Marquis is feeling now because he has heard rumors about his illness. The main character then, with a smile on her face, says that he has already recovered and is now absolutely healthy, and she herself thinks that although he was not sick at all, everyone thinks that he was very ill. The Count then says that thank God he is okay. But he was so surprised to learn that the indestructible man, like a huge mountain, fell ill and he would like to visit him while the girl is in the capital at least once, after which he asks if he can look into the mansion on any convenient day. The main character then thanks him for his words, but claims that they are going to leave early tomorrow morning, and since they are preparing to leave, they are not receiving guests today either, after which the girl asks for forgiveness. The man then says that it means nothing can be done and let her not worry about it, and the main character understands that he creates the impression of a good person. But it seems that the grandfather feels discomfort next to him, so it would be better for them not to meet. And the man then asks if he can send them a small gift in return a little later, and it's nothing special, but I would definitely like to thank him. And the girl has the right to reject this gift if she feels burdensome. The main character then smiles and thanks him and then sets off.